I died on Blue Star from a disease that wasted my muscles until I could not lift my own hand. Then I woke in the frozen ice abyss, where the daylight kills and monsters wear my dead family's faces. The night a wood puppet ghoul slaughtered my camp and my father, my camp system gave me a little bonfire that burns these monsters to ash. I hunted frost beasts with that fire. The hand that could not lift a spoon now holds up a whole camp. Drop a like and hit that subscribe button so the algorithm carries this further. 5 seconds of your time keeps the channel breathing. But to understand the gift, you have to see the curse first. Let me start over. The cold wind rages and snow fills the sky under the cover of night. Towers of white snow blanket the giant trees of Redwood Ridge, making them resemble frozen iron pillars in the darkness. I stand east of the ridge, just outside our inconspicuous cavern, throwing punches and practicing my long fist form. Snowflakes swirl around my feet as I pivot, my movements sharp and deliberate, defying the freezing air. My tall, robust body stands at 1.91 meters, and though I am not overly muscular, the power behind each strike is real. A month in this frozen hell has taught me that strength is the only currency that matters. My younger brother, Ha-Chian, emerges from our stone shelter with a tender look of admiration on his face. He watches me finish my set and eagerly asks if I am about to break through to the logging realm. I stop my training, wiping the sweat from my forehead as I tell him that it should only take another month. Chian gasps in amazement, reminding me that father said only 3 geniuses in the 9 surrounding camps have ever reached the logging realm before turning 18, meaning I will be the 4th. Feeling a brief flash of pride, I look at my younger brother but shake my head to keep myself grounded. Pointing out the truth to Chian, I explain that the logging realm is merely the beginning, whereas Rogue Camp has several digging realm cultivators who are the true powerhouses of this region. My brother's eyes light up with longing as he describes the power of those digging realm fighters. He mentions how Rogue Camp has 5 of these experts who can mine thousands of pounds of coal every single day for their people. With that resource, they do not need to burn wood for warmth, and they can even forge sharp weapons to hunt low-level frost beasts easily. I nod in agreement, acknowledging that Rogue Camp is a medium-sized settlement with over 500 people. It makes sense that their strength keeps them safe, as the frost beasts in Redwood Ridge would never let them live so comfortably otherwise. Chian sighs, lamenting that father's old injury prevented him from becoming a digging realm powerhouse. He notes that if our Great Ha camp had coal, we would have upgraded to a medium-sized camp long ago. The standards for a medium-sized camp are clear, requiring a population of over 500 active digging realm powerhouses, and the ability to survive low-level frost beast tides. Our camp only has 239 people, and 13 logging realm combatants, which is barely enough to get by. In this world, being weak means you are just waiting to become beast food. Chian mutters about Rogue Camp being stingy, wishing they would sell us some of their coal to make our lives easier. I explain to him that coal is not just for keeping warm and smelting iron, but it is also used to trade for advanced materials at the larger camps. Rogue Camp does not even have enough for themselves, so they have no reason to share it with a small camp like ours. Furthermore, we have nothing of equal value to trade, and selling coal to neighbors would destroy their safety and weapon advantages. Those advantages draw new members to their camp and ensure their military dominance as the kings of Redwood Ridge. As a transmigrator from Blue Star, I see the harsh reality of this world much more clearly than my younger brother. I transmigrated into this body a month ago, and the initial panic has finally settled into a quiet, focused determination. This place is an absolute frozen abyss, a world where there are no 4 seasons, only endless winter. The temperatures are far more terrifying than anything on my old homeworld, dropping to 70 degrees below zero at night. In this world, day and night are inverted in a way that defies all logic. The daytime cold is a physical wall, dropping temperatures to 80 degrees below zero and causing the air itself to feel like shards of ice. Normal humans cannot survive even a brief exposure to the sun. Because of this, our camp operates entirely at night, when the temperature rises slightly to 70 degrees below zero. We sleep through the 4 hours of daylight, huddled in our cavern, and only venture out under the cover of darkness. This inversion also affects the frost beasts, who become highly aggressive and far more powerful when the sun is up, making daytime travel a death sentence. I traded a dying body for a second chance in this freezing wasteland, and I will not waste it. Before my transmigration, I was a patient suffering from amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, watching my muscles waste away. My joints had stiffened, and my muscles had withered to nothing, leaving me unable to even feed myself. In those final months, the games were my only escape, a digital world where my character could run and fight while my physical body was trapped. The contrast between my active mind and my dying body became unbearable. When the doctor confirmed that my respiratory muscles would soon fail, I decided to take control of my end, choosing a quiet sunny afternoon to end my suffering. Instead of dying, I woke up in this young 16-year-old body that weighs over 90 kilograms and has the perfect build for martial arts. I initially thought my 2,000 pounds of strength made me a superhuman, but that was before I saw an ordinary woman in our camp effortlessly lift a 500 or 600 kilogram log. In this world, the average person is a perfected version of Tyson, having evolved to survive in this extreme freezing cold. To survive this extreme climate, humanity had to evolve, and my martial arts training has become my greatest shield. I chose to practice the long fist style, combining my training with cold beast blood to build my physical power. In just 1 month, my strength has grown to 4,000 pounds, putting me close to the 5,000 pound threshold for the logging realm. Reaching that level will allow me to join the lumbering team, so I can finally see the world beyond our camp. In my old life, such strength would make me a superhuman, but here, it just means I am qualified to go chop down trees. Logging realm is exactly what the name implies, meaning I am finally ready to cut timber for our survival. It is a humble goal, but in the ice abyss, you take whatever progress you can get. My brother suddenly shouts and points toward the snowy forest of Redwood Ridge, announcing that father is back. I look up to see a team of 12 people emerging from the dark woods, divided into 6 groups of 2. Each pair carries a massive tree about 20 meters long, and at the very back of the line, a burly figure walks in a slow, steady stride. Seeing my father, Ha Jung, safe at the rear makes both Chan and me breathe a sigh of relief. Every outing into the forest is a gamble with death, so returning with all members intact is a major victory. The lumbering team is our camp's lifeline, consisting of 12 of our strongest logging realm combatants. Each pair carries a massive Jin Lin tree, a timber so dense and heavy that it requires 2 men with 4,000 pounds of strength just to lift it. The sight of them carrying these 20-meter logs is always a testament to human survival in this wasteland. As the team draws closer, our smiles fade when we see the grim and uneasy expressions on their faces. Xian and I quicken our pace to meet them, and I immediately ask Father what is wrong and how much time we have left. Father asks about the time in a strained, urgent voice, his usual composure completely gone. I glance at the position of the bright moon and tell him that we only have a quarter of an hour before dawn. He orders us to get everyone into the camp immediately and extinguish the bonfires, commanding that no fires be allowed. Hearing his words, my pupils widen in confusion, and I stare at him. I explain that putting out the fires during the day will freeze everyone to death in the cavern. Without a bonfire to raise the temperature during the freezing daytime hours, our shelter will become a tomb. My father grips my shoulder, his voice trembling as he reveals that the strange monster from Redwood Ridge has appeared. Although Qian and I have never heard of this creature before, seeing the sheer terror on his face fills us with a sudden gravity. We move quickly, carrying the logs inside and sealing our cave entrance with heavy branches and stones to shut out the freezing wind. Father commands the lumbering team to carry the 6 large logs deep into our cavern before turning his attention to the central bonfire. He hesitates for a brief moment, looking at the flickering flames, but his voice is firm when he orders the camp to extinguish the fire. My father instructs everyone to put on all the clothes they can find and huddle together for warmth, warning that we can only light the fire for 10 minutes if someone is on the verge of freezing. This order immediately sparks a wave of protests from the crowd, with over 60% of the camp voicing their fear of freezing to death. Panicked cries ring out as mothers hold their children close, begging him not to do this. They do not understand that the cold is a slow death, but the monster is instant. Father raises his hand to quiet the panicked camp members, explaining the dire situation in a low, heavy voice. He tells us that the strange monster from Redwood Ridge has appeared, and that everyone in both Iron Peak Camp and Shimjio Camp is already dead. A cold dread settles over our shelter, as the reality of his words sinks in, silencing the protests. Both of those camps were larger and stronger than ours, and Iron Peak Camp was even led by a digging realm expert named Iron Eagle. Knowing that over 600 people have been wiped out makes my blood run cold. Iron Peak Camp was located to the north, situated near a rocky gorge, and was known for its iron smelting. Shimjio Camp lay to the west, built deep inside a series of natural tunnels. Both camps were larger than ours, possessing better weapons and defensive walls. Iron Eagle, the leader of Iron Peak, was a renowned digging realm cultivator who could shatter stone with his bare hands. Hearing that he and his entire camp were wiped out in a single night sent a shiver through my spine. Everyone begins to move, scrambling to find extra layers of clothing and animal skins to survive the coming day. I run to our family area, grabbing whatever garments I can find and throwing the thickest fur coat to Cheon. My brother tries to push it back, but I tell him to keep it since my body is stronger and can handle the cold. We gather in the center of the dark cavern, and the 4 men holding wet hides quickly smother the bonfire, plunging us into pitch-black darkness. The temperature drops instantly, a biting chill creeping over us, as the 239 members of our camp huddle close together. We arrange ourselves in concentric circles, placing the youngest children in the center, surrounded by the women, with the adult men forming the outer ring. The 13 members of the lumbering team stand on the very edge, acting as a human barrier against the dark. I look around in the shadows and note the complete absence of any elderly members in our crowd. In this brutal winter apocalypse, old people simply cannot survive, so our camp has none. As the hours slowly pass, the temperature drops to a bone-chilling level, and teeth begin to chatter throughout our shelter. A woman desperately begs Father to light the fire for a few minutes because her child's lips are turning blue. My father cuts her off, choosing instead to tell us about the monster to distract our minds from the freezing cold. He admits he has never seen the creature himself, but he learned about it from an old friend in Rogue Camp. Out of all the people in the 9 camps around the ridge, only one man has seen the monster and lived to tell the tale. Fear is a powerful distraction, but it does nothing to warm the blood. Cheon speaks up from the darkness, his youthful curiosity getting the better of him as he asks who that survivor is. Father names Na Peng, the former leader of Rogue Camp and a legendary digging realm expert. The name sends a murmur through the huddled crowd, and I remember the rumors of Na Peng going mad and killing his own son 15 years ago. My father confirms that Na Peng's madness was caused by his encounter with the Redwood Ridge monster. His entire 20-man hunting group was slaughtered, leaving him as the sole survivor who escaped back to Rogue Camp. Before his mind completely broke, he warned his people never to go deep into the ridge and shared whatever details he could recall. Xian asks what the creature looks like, and Father explains that it has no set shape, possessing the terrifying ability to mimic anyone's appearance. I ask if there is any way to tell the difference between a copy and the real person, but Father tells me it is impossible. He details the monster's method of hunting, explaining that it transforms into a familiar face to earn the victim's trust. Once the target trusted completely, they are turned into a human stake frozen in place and unable to move. The monster then uses a small knife to slowly carve the flesh from their body, keeping them alive and in agony until the very last piece is cut. This graphic description leaves our shelter in a stunned, silent terror, with no one daring to make a sound. But our silence is broken when a clear, loud voice calls out from outside the sealed entrance, asking us to open the door because the team has returned. The voice is identical to my father's, and the realization makes my stomach drop. Our father inside the cave tells us to remain quiet, whispering that the monster is trying to trick its way inside. He reassures us that the creature is drawn to light, and since we have no fire, it will surely leave soon. Cheon grabs my sleeve in the dark, his voice trembling as he asks me what we should do. I ask him if he noticed anything unusual about Father when he returned with the logs earlier. Cheon thinks for a moment and admits he did not notice anything out of the ordinary, which only deepens my confusion. The voice outside grows impatient, ordering us to open the entrance immediately. Before we can make a decision, the branches blocking the cave are violently cast aside. The weak light of dawn pours into the dark cavern, illuminating the absolute terror on everyone's faces. Standing in the entrance is another father, accompanied by 12 identical members of the lumbering team. We stare in disbelief, our minds struggling to comprehend the sight of 2 identical groups of 13 people. One of these fathers is a monster, and a single mistake will cost us our lives. Our father from inside the cave rushes forward with his 12 men, blocking the path of the newcomers. Both identical leaders face each other, their expressions shifting from shock to mutual outrage. I watched them intently from the middle of the crowd, scanning their clothes, their faces, and their postures for any sign of a fake. Unfortunately, they are completely identical in every way, from their scars to the subtle expressions of anger on their faces. They face each other in a sudden, silent struggle that quickly erupts into a chaotic brawl, and the camp members retreat to the back of the cave to avoid the fighting. Outside, the freezing daylight grows stronger, dropping the cave's temperature and making everyone shiver. I realize we cannot let this fight continue indefinitely, as the open entrance will either freeze us or attract wild frost beasts. Both identical leaders stop their struggle for a moment, both turning to address Cheon and me. Speaking first, the left figure claims he is the real one who returned first, telling us to help him block the cave. The right one yells that the other is the monster, claiming it returned first to set a trap and gain our trust. This monster plays its game well, but every game has rules that can be broken. Cheon begins to step toward the leader on the left, but I grab his shoulder and pull him back. I ask him if he is absolutely sure, reminding him that the monster kills by exploiting our trust. If we make the wrong choice now, we will all become human stakes. The 2 identical figures try to prove their identities by shouting personal memories. First, the figure on the left mentions applying medicine to my shoulder when I was hurt by an ice pillar, while the right one talks about helping Cheon sharpen his stone dagger last night. Both memories are completely accurate, showing that the fake knows everything our father knew. I grip Cheon's hand tightly, and when he looks at me, I give him a subtle nod. He catches my eye, and I can see that he finally understands my plan. I secretly slip a hand axe to Cheon, whispering for him to follow my lead. Stepping forward, I tell the 2 identical leaders that we cannot tell them apart, and ask them to let us stand close to inspect them. Both agree without hesitation, their faces filled with confidence as they stand still. I send Cheon to the figure on the left while I walk toward the one on the right. Walking around him, I inspect the right leader from head to toe, inspecting his back for a hidden flaw. He stands tall and proud, completely unaware that his confidence is his undoing. The moment I stand behind him, a wave of fury washes over me, and I shout for Cheon to strike. We swing our axes with all our might, aiming directly for the heads of the 2 identical fathers. Cheon's target is faster, catching his axe blade with his bare hands before it can land. My axe strikes true, splitting the right leader's head clean down the middle with a wet crack. The axe blade sinks deep into the skull, but there was no bone resistance. Instead of meeting bone, the axe split the head open, and the 2 halves tilted outward to reveal a hollow, fibrous interior. The grain of the wood was pale and dry, completely devoid of any blood or tissue. Yet the eyes on both halves remained active, turning to look at me with a chilling curiosity while the mouth split into a wide wooden grin. I yell for Cheon to retreat, abandoning my wedged axe as we scramble back to the crowd. The camp members gasp in horror at the wooden interior of the fake father. Out of nowhere, the double on the left moves, walking over to the split head of his copy. He presses the two wooden halves back together, and they fuse instantly, leaving no trace of the wound. Turning his head toward me, he asks how we figured it out, his voice sounding like dry wood shavings rubbing together. I explain that if only one of them were fake, the copy would not know all of our private family memories. The fact that both of them knew everything meant that neither of them was our real father. Our real father would never have let us walk into a trap, meaning he must have died out in the forest. With a dry chuckle, the monster confirms that my father died trying to lead it away from our camp. Cheon screams in grief and tries to charge, but I hold him back, telling him to stay calm as the 26 fake camp members surround us. I call out to the camp that fighting is our only chance to survive, and we charge into the horde of copies. The battle is a one-sided slaughter, with the fake camp members killing our people with single brutal punches. In a matter of minutes, over 20 of our combatants are dead, and the cave is filled with the scent of blood. The copies moved with terrifying speed, their wooden joints creaking as they launched themselves into the crowd. Our camp members fought back with stone axes and bone spears, but their weapons shattered against the copies' hardened wooden flesh. A logging realm combatant from our side was struck in the chest, his ribs cracking instantly as he was thrown across the cavern. I am kicked hard in the chest, flying backward to crash against the stone wall. Coughing up blood, I watch in despair as the fake father grabs Cheon by the throat and slowly squeezes, enjoying my brother's agony. If I could save him, I would sell my soul to the abyss. As Cheon gasps for air, blood seeping from his nose and mouth, a voice suddenly rings inside my mind. The system message tells me that my camp has suffered catastrophic damage, that the camp system is rebuilding, and that it is granting me the elementary building, a little bonfire, prompting me to check. A description of the little bonfire flashes in my mind, explaining its abilities and costs. It can raise the temperature within a 10-meter radius, deters and damages elementary strange monsters, but it also strongly attracts frost beasts. The daily cost is 2 wood, and the first ignition is free for 10 minutes. This little bonfire is not just a heat source, it is a system-constructed defensive barrier. The heat it radiates is a special crimson energy that feels completely different from normal wood fire. According to the system message in my mind, the fire creates a 10-meter sanctuary. Within this zone, the temperature rises to a comfortable 10 degrees above zero, a miracle in this freezing abyss. Desperate to save my brother, I focus entirely on the weapon aspect of the fire. Ignoring the pain in my cracked ribs, I stand up and stare at the fake father holding Cheon. A tiny spark appears in the air, and I pray it is enough to burn this nightmare to ash. The fake father frowns at the spark, feeling a sudden unease but refusing to release his grip. Within a second, the spark explodes into a 3-meter-high crimson flame that engulfs him, and 2 nearby copies, screaming in agony, the fake father yells as the flames cling to his flesh, devouring him. Beside him, 2 fake lumbering team members vanish into plumes of black smoke within seconds. His body is reduced to a red skeleton before it too crumbles into black ash. I run forward to pull Cheon away from the ash, helping him stand as the fire continues to burn on the stone floor. The remaining survivors quickly gather behind me, staring in awe at the protective flame. Those 23 copies halt their advance, stopping exactly 10 meters away from the heat. My father's surviving clone glares at the bonfire with deep apprehension, realizing he cannot cross the threshold. He sneers, asking me how long my little fire can possibly burn. I look him dead in the eye, determined to play this bluff to the very end. Shouting back that the fire will burn for a very long time, I order the camp members to bring all of our stored wood to expand the flames. The people move quickly, stacking logs and pushing the bonfire toward the entrance of the cave. Step by step, the fake camp members retreat as the light and heat expand, keeping their distance from the heat. We maintain this standoff for over an hour, until the fake father is forced out of the cave entrance. He glares at me with bitter resentment before leading the remaining clones back into the snowy forest of Redwood Ridge. We watch them disappear into the white storm, and I collapse onto the stone floor in sheer exhaustion. Cheon approaches me, whispering that there is a problem with the bonfire's temperature. I nod, explaining that the special heat and protection only work within a 10-meter radius, and the rest was just a normal fire used to scare them off. The relief of survival is quickly replaced by a wave of grief as the camp realizes our father and the lumbering team are gone. Over 70 people have died, and the cave is filled with the sound of weeping. We survived the first night, but the winter is endless, and the monster is still out there. Realizing we know nothing about the strange monster's true form or how it controls its copies, I feel a deep frustration. Stepping toward the cave entrance alone, I begin picking up stones and heavy branches to seal the opening before the daytime cold kills us. Cheon joins me, followed by the rest of the survivors, everyone working silently to shut out the freezing wind. I look back at the people of Great Hawk Camp, and despite the bitter cold, a faint warmth rises in my chest. We have lost our father and many of our friends, but we are still alive. This campfire is our new beginning, and we will protect it with our lives. With over 100 people working together, the cave entrance is quickly sealed, shutting out the howling wind and burying us in darkness. A faint firelight flickers within the cavern, but the enclosed space brings a small sense of security that seems to ease the terror on the faces of my people. Still, their expressions remain lost, and confusion hangs heavy in the air as they stare at me in silence. My younger brother, Hachian, approaches and asks what we should do next, his voice immediately drawing everyone's attention to me. They know that without my quick thinking and the life-saving little bonfire, none of us would have survived the attack. I look at the reliance in their eyes and feel the immense pressure doubling on my shoulders. In truth, I cannot avoid stepping forward, because my father, Hajong, and the 12 members of the lumbering team are confirmed to have perished. Another 72 people died in the recent massacre, leaving only 154 survivors in Great Ha Camp. Among them, only 53 are able-bodied adults who were too weak to join the lumbering team, because their strength was only at the level of ordinary humans. Of the remaining 101 members, 25 are young adults close to my age, and the rest are children between 3 and 12 years old. As the strongest person left and the son of the former head, it naturally becomes my responsibility to lead my people to survival. I traded a dying body on Blue Star for this frozen hell, and I have no intention of letting a monster end it. In my previous life, my muscles withered away from my disease, while I watched helplessly. But now I possess a body that can actually fight back. If I must lead these people to survive, then I will become the shield they need. There is no room for hesitation when death is waiting just outside the door. I cast aside my chaotic thoughts, look around the dark cave, and announce that we cannot stay here. Everyone must pack their belongings because we will move to another location as soon as night falls. The strange monster from Redwood Ridge already knows where we are, and staying here will only lead to a dead end. Xian asks which cave we are moving to, and I tell him we are heading west to number 4. In this freezing world, humans have spent generations learning to hide from the daylight, the ice tides, the frost beasts, and the strange monsters. Under years of constant hiding, we have developed the habit of a cunning rabbit having 3 burrows, and Great Ha Camp is no exception. Having lived in Redwood Ridge for decades, our camp has opened up 6 hiding caves, all of which are about 500 to 600 meters apart and distributed in a circular pattern around the Earth's slope on the east side of Redwood Ridge. We are currently in cave number 1, and cave number 4 is the furthest from here, making it the safest choice to avoid the monster's search. No one raises any objections, immediately turning to pack their sparse belongings, while I take the opportunity to examine our camp system. The holographic interface glows in my vision, displaying the status of Great Ha Camp at level 0 with me officially listed as the Lord. Our territory population stands at 154, and our resources are listed as 15 units of wood, 0 coal, 0 iron, 0 silver, and 0 gold. The only constructed building we have is the level 1 little bonfire, which consumes 2 units of wood daily and is currently placed in the cave. A special note on the panel explains that the little bonfire significantly increases the temperature within a 10-meter radius, deters and damages elementary strange monsters, but also has a strong attraction for frost beasts. Furthermore, for every 10 units of wood burned, a special small torch will be generated, which functions similarly to the bonfire and can be carried with us. Below the active screen, I notice 8 grayed-out options for buildings that we cannot construct yet. These include a wooden dummy post, a green bamboo fence, and a marking stone. We also unlock a medicinal herb pot, a yellow land, a grinding stone, a little wooden table, and a crude iron chain. Selecting the wooden dummy post shows that it requires 100 units of wood and 20 units of iron to construct. The other 7 buildings also require resources, with the little wooden table needing silver and the crude iron chain requiring gold. Having witnessed the power of the little bonfire, I covet these upgrades, but the reality is that I have never even seen coal in my month here. Upgrading the little bonfire itself to level 2 requires 200 units of wood and 50 units of iron, making it clear that we are desperately short of materials. I walk over to the cave wall, where 3 massive logs lie, each about 30 meters long and over 3 meters thick. The growth of large trees in this world is terrifying, but their weight is exaggerated because their outer bark is covered with a layer of ice crystals. Felling them requires a base strength of at least 5,000 pounds, which is why logging is a direct measure of power. My father always chose the thinnest trees because our strength was limited, and even carrying those back was a life-threatening struggle. These 3 logs represent 15 units of wood, meaning we would need 20 more trees and 20 units of iron to upgrade the bonfire. I shake my head to clear these unrealistic thoughts, knowing that only Rogue Camp has access to iron in this region. Right now, survival is our only priority, and I must break through to the logging realm as quickly as possible. The 15 units of wood we have will only keep the bonfire lit for 7.5 days, and without its heat during the day, my people will freeze to death. Today, the 4 hours of daylight are exceptionally agonizing for the survivors, who huddle together in the dim cave. The grief of losing their families is compounded by the terrifying uncertainty of the night march ahead. When the daytime cold finally begins to lift, I pry open a small crack in the sealed entrance to inspect the outside world. Night has fallen, turning the snow-laden forest of Redwood Ridge into a pristine, silver-white landscape under the starry sky. I turn to the camp and divide the 154 survivors into 3 distinct groups. The first group of 40 able-bodied adults will lead the way and carry the 3 heavy logs, while the 76 children and 13 women form the middle section. I ordered Xian and the remaining 23 young adults to follow me in the rear to guard our retreat. Instructing everyone to keep the line tight, I tell them blow the bone whistle if anything happens, and avoid shouting to prevent drawing any unwanted attention. With a simple thought, I extinguish the little bonfire, watching the flames vanish as the system logs it as unplaced. We slip out of the cave one by one, our white beast hides blending perfectly with the surrounding snow. The cold wind bites at my face, but I keep my eyes on the forest, ready for whatever lies ahead. We march into the darkness, leaving our ruined home behind. The biting wind sweeps across the frozen wasteland, chilling us to the bone as we trudge westward under the stars. Although the distance between cave number 1 and cave number 4 is less than 2 kilometers, the deep snow makes the journey feel endless. The snow accumulation in Redwood Ridge is astonishing, with the thinnest drifts reaching half a meter and the deepest pockets swallowing up to 6 meters of land. Several adults in the leading group slip down the treacherous earth slope, rising with bruises but continuing to push forward. Every time we encounter a massive drift, the column must halt while the strongest men clear a path through the white wall. The poor visibility and the presence of so many small children force me to keep our pace slow and deliberate. After 2 hours of struggling through the frozen wilderness, we finally arrive at the entrance of cave number 4. The opening is hidden behind a thick screen of frozen leaves, snow, and long icicles that look like teeth. I notice that several children are shivering violently with blue lips, so I quickly use my stone axe to shatter the frozen barrier. We file into the spacious cavern, which measures about 100 square meters and offers more room than our previous home. I immediately summon the little bonfire to life in the center of the cave, sending a wave of crimson warmth through the dark space. Xian is instructed to lead a group to seal the entrance, which causes him to look at me in confusion. He points out that the night temperatures are higher and the frost beasts are mostly dormant, making a sealed entrance seem unnecessary. I gather everyone around the warmth and explain that this special bonfire is our only shield against the strange monster, but its light and heat will also draw the wild beasts. From now on, the entrance must remain sealed at all times, a rule that everyone accepts after remembering the wooden copies of our families. I turn to Qian and ask him how much food we have left in our stores. Qian's expression grows solemn as he reports that we only have 700 pounds of crystal fruit and 60 pounds of cold beast meat. A heavy silence falls over the cave, and I can see the growing worry on the faces of my people. Farming is impossible in this eternal winter, and our only stable food source is the sweet, fist-sized crystal fruit from the ice shuo trees, with each person needing at least 2 fruits a day to survive. Our 700 pounds will barely last us 10 days, even under strict rationing. Cold beast meat is a strategic resource that is even more precious than wood, because it is the only way to cultivate our strength. In the past, my father rationed 1 pound a day for the lumbering team and half a pound every 3 days for the teenagers, but the reality was far harsher. Our camp had only managed to hunt a single juvenile bone-spiked frost wolf during my entire month here, making meat a luxury reserved for the elite's children. Yet, Qian always gave his share to me, claiming that my breakthrough to the logging realm was the only thing that could save our family. Qian walks over to the bonfire holding a lump of the deep blue flesh that belongs to the frost beasts. He addresses the camp, proposing that all 60 pounds of meat be given to me so that I can break through and protect the camp. The complex nature of my people shows itself as a deathly silence fills the cavern, with no one willing to speak. Conflicted looks appear on the faces of the former lumbering team's children, who know this meat was bought with their father's lives. Wan Saying, a burly young man whose father, Wan Gang, was the second strongest in the camp, steps forward to ask if I can swear never to abandon them once I become strong. I look at him and the rest of the silent crowd, choosing to be honest rather than offering empty promises. My response to Song is that if I were the type to leave, an oath would not stop me, so I will not make one. I state that trust must be our cornerstone, and if they give me this meat, I will repay them tenfold and hundredfold in the future. The silence stretches for a moment, but then a voice calls out expressing trust in me. One Song nods, declaring that he is willing to give his share of the frost beast meat to me so that we all have a chance to live. More voices join in, nodding in agreement as they realize that a strong leader is their only hope of surviving the winter. I accept the blue meat from Xian's hands, a quiet determination hardening my chest as I look at their hopeful faces. Let them doubt my path, but I will make sure they never regret placing their lives in my hands. In this freezing wasteland, a solitary wolf dies, but a pack that stands together can defy the heavens. I will devour this meat and build a strength that no monster can shatter. My father died protecting this camp, and I will not let his sacrifice go to waste. The survivors of Great Ha Camp settle around the crimson bonfire, some of the younger children already fast asleep from exhaustion. Everyone else keeps their eyes fixed on me as I stand bare-chested in the warmth, holding a piece of roasted meat. The sizzling flesh releases a rich, savory aroma that makes everyone swallow hard in the darkness. I know that eating 5 pounds of cold beast meat at once is dangerous because the intense energy can cause a normal cultivator's body to burst. Forcing the meat down my throat anyway, I feel an immediate heavy fullness in my stomach. The energy quickly explodes into my bloodstream, sending a burning heat rushing through my abdomen and out to my limbs. Sweat pours from my forehead, shoulders, back, and palms as my muscles bulge and veins swell across my body. My breathing grows heavy, exhaling clear plumes of hot air that startle the watching crowd. I step into the open center of the cave and begin practicing the long fist form to channel the raging energy. My fists strike the air like cannonballs, vibrating the very atmosphere with a sharp whistle on every punch. I explain the movements to the camp, telling them that the long fist strikes with the speed of lightning and rises with the force of a gale, interchanging hands to destroy the enemy. Once we have a stable supply of cold beast meat, everyone in the camp will train with me to build their strength. The people lie quietly on the cold stone floor, listening to my words but keeping their movements to a minimum to conserve energy. Wan Xiang watches me with envy, whispering to Qian to ask if my father taught me this martial art. Qian proudly explains that I created the style myself, and that practicing it makes the body absorb the beast's energy much faster. Song's eyes widen at the realization, knowing that faster absorption means a much quicker path to power. Over the next 7 days, I consume 5 pounds of cold beast meat daily, pushing my body to its absolute limits. My base strength grows by nearly 100 pounds each day, building upon the 4,000 pounds I had before the attack. We use a set of 12 brown wooden stakes to measure my progress, stacking the weights as the camp watches in silent hope. By the 7th day, I managed to lift 4,900 pounds, bringing us to the very brink of the logging realm. Our food supply is almost gone, with the survivors having consumed over 500 pounds of crystal fruit in a week. There are less than 200 pounds left, which is not even enough to feed the camp for another 3 days. On the 8th day, I walked to the wooden stakes, knowing that the survival of Great Hawk Camp rests entirely on my shoulders. I stacked the 5 largest stakes together, preparing to test my limits against 5,000 pounds of solid timber. Squatting down, I gripped the bottommost stake, taking a deep breath to steel my mind. 5,000 pounds is a weight that an ordinary person cannot comprehend, but in this frozen world it is merely the entrance fee to the wilderness. I let out a low roar as I lift, my muscles screaming and my blood boiling as the stakes slowly rise off the floor. Pushing the weight all the way above my head, I hold it steady as the cave erupts in cheers. Qian shouts in excitement that I have finally broken through to the logging realm. Wansang laughs aloud, declaring that my new strength means we finally have a chance to survive. I drop the heavy stakes with a loud crash, feeling a long-lost look of relaxation soften my face. Turning to the crowd, I tell them that as soon as night falls, I am going out to hunt for food. The logging realm is just the beginning of my ascent, and the forest will yield to my strength. I will not let my people starve in this dark cave while there are resources waiting in the snow. The cold wants to freeze my blood, but I will make it run hot with every strike. Let the beasts of Redwood Ridge hear my name and tremble. The birth of a new logging realm cultivator brings a long-absent joy to the dark cavern. My own mood is excellent because breaking through in only 8 days shows that my body has incredible potential. As night approaches, I walk to the bonfire and pull out a charred half-meter stick with a white tip. This is a small torch, generated by the camp system because we burned 13 units of wood during our week here. The torch has the same properties as the bonfire, meaning it will deter strange monsters but also attract hungry frost beasts. I tie the torch to my back, slip 2 sharp stone axes into my belt, and grab a 3-meter wooden staff. Peering through a tiny crack in the entrance, I confirm that darkness has fully fallen, and turn to give Qian my final instructions. I tell him to keep the cave sealed, remember our secret signal, and never open the door for anyone who cannot give it. Qian nods heavily, the memory of the wooden copy still fresh in his mind, and seals the entrance behind me. I step into the biting cold, my boots crunching softly on the snow as I head toward the Redwood Ridge outskirts. The actual size of the ridge is unknown, but our camp has only ever explored a 5-kilometer radius around our caves. Redwood Ridge has been expanding outwards over the years, ignoring the logging efforts of the 9 surrounding camps. The rapid growth of the trees is a double-edged sword, providing wood but also bringing the frost beasts' habitats closer to our camps. I navigate the silver-clad forest, marveling at the towering trees that measure 3 to 4 meters in diameter. Icicles hang from the snow-laden branches like frozen daggers, creating a beautiful but deadly maze. I search the trees carefully until I find a vermilion frost tree, its bark emitting a faint red glow beneath the ice crystals. The fragile branches of the vermilion frost tree mean that heavy frost beasts rarely nest in them, making it safe to approach. This is unlike the rare Jin Lin trees, which have thick yellow trunks and are favored by the strongest beasts in the forest. I mark the vermilion frost tree with my axe so I can chop it on my return, then focus on finding the ice shuo trees. These trees prefer light and grow in open clearings, which makes them easier to spot from a height. I climb a nearby tree, my hands freezing as I scramble up the slippery ice-coated bark to inspect the surroundings. From my high perch, I spot a relatively open clearing about 300 meters to the west. I remember my father's warning that our territory only extends 800 paces into the outskirts, making the clearing ours. The lumbering team members died before they could show me the exact coordinates, but my search has been successful. I leap down and walk cautiously toward the open ground, checking the crowns of every tree I pass. Although the frost beasts are dormant at night, a single mistake will lead to an early grave. Our camp has only ever managed to hunt a juvenile wolf, proving that even a sleeping beast is a terrifying threat. I reach the edge of the clearing and find a massive 40-meter ice shuo tree laden with sweet crystal fruit. By my estimation, there are over 1,000 pounds of fruit hanging from the branches, enough to feed the camp for weeks. I do not let my excitement blind me, choosing to climb a neighboring vermilion frost tree first to inspect the area. My smile vanishes as I look closer at the branches of the ice shuo tree. A cluster of long white icicles is hanging upside down in a way that defies nature. The forest never gives up its treasures without a price, and I am not about to pay with my life. A smart hunter looks before he leaps, especially when the prey is waiting to eat him. The system gave me strength, but my eyes are still my best weapon. Let the beast sleep while I find a way to claim my prize. I stare at the branch and realize that those are not icicles, but the barbs of a giant creature. A 4-meter, ice-covered tongue hangs from its mouth, blending perfectly with the surrounding frost. I recognize it immediately as a juvenile long-tongued snowmane, a low-level frost beast that resembles a wild boar. A juvenile weighs around 400 pounds, possessing immense strength and a lethal, flexible tongue. The lumbering team always warned that hunting a juvenile requires a strong archer and a dozen logging realm cultivators. Since the beast is asleep, I decide to gather the fruit quietly without disturbing its rest. I pick up a stone and hurl it toward a tree 100 meters away to test how deeply it sleeps. The icicles rattle down with a clear sound, but the snowmane does not stir, proving it is indeed a heavy sleeper at night. Just as I prepare to climb down and start harvesting, the sharp whistle of an arrow cuts through the air. The projectile strikes the snowmane, and the beast lets out an angry roar that shakes the snow from the branches. I freeze in place, cursing the intruders who have just ruined my quiet harvest. These hunters must be from Great So Camp, which occupies the territory directly west of ours. A sharp voice calls out, ordering someone named Sokdong to aim for the beast's right eye, while the others prepare the ropes. 17 people emerge from the forest wearing animal skins, holding stone axes and led by a man with a gleaming greatsword. I feel a stab of envy at the sight of the iron weapon, which must have been bought from Rogue Camp. Our camp only possessed a semi-iron axe, and its superior sharpness made our stone tools look like toys. Below my tree, the hunters of Great Sok Camp engage the wounded beast. The snowmane charges with terrifying speed, its massive body kicking up a storm of white snow. Shooting from the shadows, the archers shoot, slowing its momentum and allowing the ground team to set their rope snares. The leader tosses a loop around its neck, and the 14 hunters pull the ropes in different directions to bring the beast down. Crashing to the ground, the snowmane bellows, and 2 arrows plunge straight into its remaining good eye. The beast roars in agony, and the hunters laugh in triumph as they keep their distance to finish it off. Slowly, the thrashing subsides until the giant body lies completely still in the stained snow. The leader confirms the kill, and 2 middle-aged men emerge from the trees to guide the harvest. I recognize the first man as Seok Chong, the head of Great Seok Camp, and the other as his brother, Seok Dong. Watching them from my hiding spot, my brow furrows as they begin to harvest their prey. I remain silent in the branches, calculating my options in the freezing night. It is frustrating to find at the sight of these thieves in our territory. It would be a lie to say I am not envious of this long-tongued snowman. However, circumstances are stronger than individual will. And even though Great Seok Camp has crossed our boundary, I currently have neither the energy nor the strength to intervene. Not only must I keep my distance, but I also have to avoid any direct contact with them. According to my late father, Ha Jung, the relationship between Great Sok Camp and Great Ha Camp was always quite good in the past. Yet times have changed, and Great Ha Camp is now extremely weak, meaning that if outsiders discover our true situation, our fate will slip from our own hands. With this realization, I force my expression to soften and continue observing the crowd below. The hunters of Great Sok Camp walk over to the fallen beast, excited to harvest 400 or 500 pounds of meat. One hunter points out that their leader traded 300 pounds of meat for a bow at Rogue Camp, proving the weapon's value. Seok leader orders them to stop talking and move the carcass quickly since they are trespassing on our territory. His command silences the group and they set to work. Let them steal for now because their bill will come due. When a hunter tries to pull the black arrow from the beast's eye, it convulses and flips over. Moving with explosive speed, the monster lunges forward and shatters the man in midair. Panic erupts as they realize the beast was feigning death to lure them in. Seok leader yells for everyone to scatter, but the hunters are too close to escape. Charging the nearest hunter, the beast launches its ice cone tongue with the speed of lightning, instantly impaling him. The tongue then curves to strike Seok leader, but a swordsman blocks it with his iron blade. A sharp metallic ring echoes as the steel deflects the tongue, allowing the swordsman a brief moment of relief. Whipping around the blade, the tongue impales an unarmed hunter before coiling around the swordsman's neck. Seok leader orders silence since the blind beast tracks them by sound, but it is too late. The swordsman throws his iron broadsword to his leader just before the tongue pulls taut, snapping his head off. In this frozen hell, A single loud breath is a death sentence. This gruesome sight fills the surviving hunters with absolute terror. Soak Leader catches the broadsword in midair, his face contorted with rage, yet he suppresses his anger and remains silent to avoid the monster's attention. The rest of his men copy him, standing frozen and mute in the snow. A deathly silence falls over the clearing beneath the ice shwo tree. Hiding in the branches above, I dare not move or even draw a deep breath. The entire massacre takes place in the blink of an eye, completely catching me off guard. I am just about to climb down and leave after they claim the prey, but in mere seconds, 3 of their men are slaughtered. The long-tongued snowmane is not just incredibly resilient, but its sheer power is terrifying. More importantly, its actions display a level of cunning that seems entirely unnatural for a beast. It knows how to feign death to draw the hunters close, remaining completely still until they are within striking distance. Since this is only a low-level frost beast, I wonder how monstrously powerful and cunning the mid-level and high-level beasts must be. It finally makes sense why only Rogue Camp has a proper hunting team, while the weaker camps like Great Ha Camp can only manage a lumbering team. Survival in Redwood Ridge is a game where the stakes are always stacked against us. The quiet whistle of an arrow slicing through the night air interrupts my thoughts. Looking toward the sound, I see the arrow strike a large tree 50 meters away, its impact shaking loose a shower of heavy ice shards that crash loudly into the snow. The noise immediately draws the long-tongued snowmane, which pivots on its thick limbs and charges toward the distraction. I look down at the remaining hunters of Great Seok Camp and realize that the shot is fired by one of their archers hiding in the distance. The moment the monster moves away, the hunters bolt toward the west in a desperate panic, leaving the 3 mutilated corpses behind. They disappear into the dark forest without looking back. Panic is a luxury I cannot afford. The long-tongued snowmane finds no prey at the tree and quickly returns to the base of the ice shwo tree. It exhales plumes of steaming air, occasionally stomping its heavy paws in lingering frustration. I remain frozen in my tree branch, refusing to make a single movement even when the beast lies still below. My patience pays off when, after half an hour, the eyeless monster suddenly raises its head and cocks its ears to scan for any sound. Seeing this, I feel a wave of relief that I stayed put, as a single shift would have given away my position. The beast is still dangerous even when wounded. Lingering for a bit longer, the blind beast slowly climbs back up the ice shwo tree. Its movements are unsteady, and once it finds a thick branch, it lies down and blends into the surrounding ice crystals. I wait another hour without moving, not out of fear, but because I want to ensure it is fully asleep. Climbing down now would be easy, but I am reluctant to leave empty-handed. From its clumsy climbing, the beast is clearly in terrible condition, and both of its eyes are blind. That carcass represents 400 or 500 pounds of precious beast meat, and leaving it behind represents a massive waste. Still, taking it down will be incredibly difficult, as the 3 mangled corpses below remind me. I rack my brain for a solution until a plan finally takes shape. Fortune favors the patient. I descend from the branches as silently as possible, keeping my eyes on the sleeping long-tongued snowmane. Once my boots touch the snow, I creep southward until I reach a large, oval-shaped boulder about 2 or 3 meters wide. After checking the area, I use my bare hands to dig a man-sized trench in the deep snow right beside the rock. I lie down in it to test the fit, ensuring I can bury myself completely if needed. Satisfied, I walk 50 meters away from the boulder and retrieve a black wooden rod from my back. This is the small torch generated by my camp system, which is created for every 10 units of wood burned and is known to strongly attract frost beasts. I have brought it along hoping it will find a use, and now is the perfect opportunity. Looking back at the ice shwo tree, I plant the small torch firmly into the snow. Taking out my flint, I strike it to send sparks flying onto the white tip of the wood. It ignites instantly, erupting into a half-meter-high crimson flame that matches the heat of the bonfire that scorched the strange monster back in our cave. The moment the fire flares, I sprint back to the large boulder and slide into my pre-dug pit. I quickly scrape the loose snow over my body, burying myself completely until only my eyes are exposed to the cold air. Frozen in place, I keep my gaze locked on the burning torch in the distance. Now, I wait for my bait to pull the line. My trust in the camp system is high, especially after watching it burn the strange monster to ashes. Still, I am uncertain how strongly this flame attracts the local wildlife, or if the blind long-tongued snowmane will notice it. The answer arrives as light, tentative footsteps crunch through the snow from behind me. As the sound draws closer, I dare not turn my head, though the steady approach tells me my trap is working. Soon, the beast's massive ice-spiked body comes into view, passing less than 10 meters from my hiding spot. I hold my breath and freeze my gaze, not even daring to blink as it moves past. The 2 black arrows from the Great Seok Camp hunters are still lodged deep in its eyes, likely causing too much pain for it to yank out. Blinded, the long-tongued snowmane proceeds slowly, hesitating with every few steps. Yet as it nears the torch, it grows visibly excited and quickens its pace. It stops right in front of the flame, leaning its face close to the heat. Even though its skin brushes the fire, it shows no pain, and its breathing steadies as the crimson light envelops its massive frame. The beast appears to enjoy the sensation, which fills me with confusion as I watch from the snow. A monster that loves fire is a very bad sign. My confusion turns to dread as I inspect the long-tongued snowmane's body. The wounds left by the Great Soak Camp hunters are extensive, but under the torch's glow, the bleeding stops and the flesh begins to knit together at a visible speed. Its overall presence seems to strengthen by the second, making me realize that the fire is actively healing and cultivating its power. My plan of letting it bleed out in the cold has completely backfired, and I have effectively provided it with a recovery station. I abandon all thoughts of harvesting the carcass, wishing only for the torch to burn out so I can slip away safely. But the frozen wilderness rarely grants such simple wishes, and a low, hoarse roar echoes from the trees behind me. The long-tongued snowmane pivots, snarling at the newcomer with sudden aggression. A massive predator leaps from a nearby branch, landing less than 10 meters away. It has blue fur, a body 2 meters long, a collar of sharp barbs, and a jaw packed with fangs. I recognize it immediately as a bone-spiked frost wolf, the other dominant predator in the Redwood Ridge outskirts. Seeing both beasts in one night makes me realize that their hunting grounds are expanding closer to Great Hawk Camp, which is only 5 kilometers away. If these creatures push outward any further, they will discover our hiding spots and slaughter everyone. The survival of my people depends on us building our strength before that happens. I need to grow stronger, and I need to do it yesterday. The two beasts clash in a flurry of teeth and claws over the healing warmth of the torch. While the blind monster is larger and heavier, the bone-spiked frost wolf displays a terrifying level of intelligence. After a few heavy collisions, the wolf utilizes its agility to dodge the blind beast's charges, circling and looking for an opening. Sliding underneath the blind beast's belly, the wolf uses its claws and neck barbs to tear deep gashes into its underbelly. As green blood stains the snow, the wolf halts its loud movements and creeps in silent circles. Watching this from my pit, I am shocked by the sheer intelligence these predators possess. They are not simple wild animals. They are hunters. Pouncing from behind, the wolf pins the blind beast and sinks its fangs into its neck. The monster thrashes and thrusts its ice tongue, but the wolf avoids the strikes. After over 100 breaths of struggling, the blind beast collapses and dies of blood loss. Victorious, the wolf basks in the flame before picking up the torch and carrying it away into the forest. A clean getaway for him, and a free meal for me. The bone-spiked frost wolf leaves the carcass behind, not even bothering to drag its prize away. I realize that the small torch's value to the beast far exceeds a simple meal, prompting it to flee before other predators arrive. Once the wolf is gone, I climb out of the snow pit and run toward the fallen long-tongued snowmane. I hoist the 400-pound carcass onto my back, feeling the massive weight settle on my shoulders, and sprint eastward. The fight was loud and the scent of blood is thick, meaning other predators could arrive at any moment. With dawn fast approaching, I push my body to its absolute limits and race through the freezing forest until the camp cave comes into view. Nothing beats a heavy haul on an empty stomach. Approaching the hidden cave entrance, I do not simply barge in, but stop to call out our secret passcode. I recite that the winds and rains from all 8 directions cannot compare to the rain of Redwood Ridge, and when there is rain on Dragon Gate Mountain, the Snow Plains tiger descends. Hachion's excited voice echoes from within, followed by the rustling of branches being cleared away. Both my brother and Wanseong emerge to greet me, but they freeze when they see the massive carcass on my shoulders. Their jaws drop in stunned silence, completely speechless at the sight of the beast. I chuckle and tell them that I am lucky, urging them to get inside and seal the entrance before we talk. We carry the heavy load into the cavern, where gasps of shock immediately erupt from the gathered crowd. My people surround us, asking if I went hunting, and wondering if my strength has already reached such a terrifying level. They remark that even the previous lumbering team never managed to bring back a beast of this size, and the looks they give me shift from mere reliance to deep reverence and hope. I try to explain that it was simply luck rather than my own combat skill, but their skeptical faces tell me they do not believe a word. Rather than correcting them, I decide to let the misunderstanding stand, since keeping their spirits high in these dark times is worth more than the literal truth. If they want to believe I'm a hero, I might as well play the part. I notice the wild excitement in the eyes of Hachian and Wansong, prompting me to flick both of their foreheads to bring them back to reality, warning them not to let their imaginations run wild. I explain that a living long-tongued snowmane would easily devour our entire camp. The average survivor can afford to be naive, but these two are the camp's potential protectors, and must break through to the logging realm next. If they underestimate the dangers of the forest, they will not survive their first night out. Once I explain the actual chain of events, they finally grasp the truth, yet their eyes still shine with admiration. They can clearly picture the danger of sneaking around two battling monsters, and my standing in their minds only grows. Wanseong stands and angrily condemns Great Soak Camp for hunting in our territory, reminding us how my father and uncle used to lead our men to help them when they lacked hunters. Hachion nods in agreement, his expression dark with resentment. Crossing boundaries for resources is a major offense in Redwood Ridge, where weak camps can only operate in the narrow outermost fringes of the forest. Aside from the medium-sized rogue camp, the lands allocated to the rest of us are tiny. If one camp steals resources from another, it directly threatens the victim's survival. Given how familiar they were with the ice shua tree, Great Siok Camp has likely been stealing our crystal fruit for a long time. A debt is a debt, and I keep receipts. I tell them to ignore the boundary crossing for now, since we lack the strength to contest it and must focus entirely on surviving. Once we are stronger, they will not dare step foot on our land. Turning to the matter of their cultivation, I ask how long it would take them to break through to the logging realm if they had unlimited access to frost beast meat and blood. They look at the carcass, their breathing turning heavy. Hachian states he would need just over a month, which aligns with my estimate since his strength already exceeds 2,000 pounds. Wan Song reports his strength is at 3,000 pounds, meaning he could break through in under a month, or even within 20 days if I teach him the long fist. I agree immediately, promising to teach the technique to everyone in our camp. Looking at the long-tongued snowmane carcass, I begin calculating our resources. At their current level, Hachian and Wan Song can consume a maximum of 3 pounds of beast meat daily. If both require a month to break through, they will need a combined total of 180 pounds, leaving over 200 pounds of meat for the others. I have them gather the 22 young adults in the camp who are around our age, forming a group of 24 including the 2 of them. Addressing them directly, I skip the pleasantries and explain that this carcass is a gift from heaven, proving our camp is not meant to perish. We must seize this opportunity to build our strength as quickly as possible. No handouts, only results. I claim 100 pounds of meat for myself, allocating 90 pounds each to Wan Seong and Hachian. The remaining 170 pounds will go to the camp. I announce that the 22 young adults will receive 1 pound each, with the top 5 performers in a strength competition getting an additional 30 pounds. Reminding them that I cannot defend the camp alone, I urge everyone to strive for breakthroughs. In Redwood Ridge, anyone who does not break through by age 25 is considered past their prime. Progress is still possible, but potential declines rapidly, making resource consumption inefficient. Witnessing the power of the frost wolf and the snowmane makes me realize why every ounce of food must be maximized. Concentrating resources on a few young prospects is our only viable strategy to activate more hunters and secure Great Hat Camp's future. Equality is a luxury we cannot afford when death is at the door. The strength competition begins at dusk the following day, drawing the attention of the entire camp. I distribute 1 pound of beast meat to each of the 22 participants to fuel their efforts. While 1 pound cannot sustain long-term cultivation, it is enough to fill their stomachs and allow them to exert their maximum basic strength. After eating, their faces flush with warmth, and their lethargy vanishes, drawing a stark contrast to the rest of our malnourished people. I leave Hachian and Wan Song to oversee the trials while I focus on my own cultivation, consuming my share of cold beast blood and meat. The slaughter of Great Silk Camp's hunters and the terrifying strength of the frost beasts have filled me with a deep sense of urgency. Great Silk Camp possesses 16 Logging Realm combatants and 2 elite archers, yet they lose 3 men to a single low-level beast. While their negligence plays a role, it is clear that the creatures of the forest are both strong and intelligent. I estimate the impact force of the long-tongued snowmane in its prime is close to 10,000 pounds, which matches the standard of a Digging Realm expert. Aside from Rogue Camp, only the head of Iron Peak Camp, Iron Eagle, has attained this level of power. I hold my breath, focus my energy, and punch the stone floor of the cavern to test my limits. Although I now command 5,000 pounds of raw power, my strike only produces a muffled thud and stirs up a bit of dust. The ground remains entirely unmarked. Because the frozen earth is as hard as steel, breaking through it to extract resources is a feat reserved for the Digging Realm. If the earth is this stubborn, I will have to be more stubborn. Survival in this place is of a brutal difficulty, as the frozen soil makes agriculture impossible. We are entirely dependent on the wild ice shuo trees to gather the crystal fruit that keeps us alive. I recall asking my father if we could transplant these trees closer to our shelter. He told me it was impossible because they require sunlight, which is only present during the day when the cold is lethal to humans. Furthermore, daytime belongs to the predators and the strange monsters, making outdoor cultivation suicidal. Rogue Camp's past attempt at transplanting these trees years ago only invited hordes of hungry frost beasts that devastated their ranks. Still, if we build our strength to a point where we do not fear the beasts, transplanting them might become a reality. Great Hawk Camp is a long way from achieving such strength, but the dream keeps me focused as I continue my training. I perform 4 consecutive sets of the long fist, my beast hide soaking with sweat as I channel the energy of the meat and blood. When I test my grip, I feel a modest increase in my power, though my brow furrows at the rate of progress. Having broken through to the logging realm, my daily capacity for beast meat has increased by 2 pounds, allowing me to consume 7 pounds a day. Yet the returns are beginning to diminish, which is a natural law of cultivation that I must accept. As I finish my routine, Wan Shang and Hachian approach me with the 5 winners of the strength trials. They introduce them as Wol Peng, Im Gae, Chu Beng, Yukyang, and So Nyong. I look at each of them in turn, my gaze pausing when I reach So Nyong. In a world of starvation, raw talent is a beautiful thing. The trials favor the children of the former lumbering team, who had a better physical foundation. Wolpeng, Imge, Chubeng, and Yuqiang are all sons of deceased veterans, while Seonyang is the only winner from a non-logging family. Despite never consuming beast meat or practicing cultivation, Seonyang managed to lift 1,100 pounds. The others lift between 1,500 to 2,000. Looking at Seonyang, I realize the kid has incredible latent talent. Since eating a single pound of meat cannot instantly boost strength by a massive margin, Seonyang's baseline physical power must be naturally high. I think to myself that this boy might provide a pleasant surprise in the future. Feeling my gaze, Seonyang shifts his feet nervously, looking self-conscious. He knows he is the only outlier among the winners and that his raw lifting numbers are the lowest of the group. Understanding his anxiety, I look away to spare him further pressure. I retrieve the 5 portions of beast meat and hand them out to the winners. A nervous dog still bites if you train it right. I tell the 5 youths that I will train them in the long fist every day. Normally, they can only absorb half a pound of beast meat daily using their primitive methods. The martial art will increase their metabolic efficiency, allowing them to grow stronger at a much faster rate. I instruct them to practice diligently, warning them that future shares of meat will be awarded to whoever is closest to breaking through. They accept the food with solemn nods, shouting in unison that they understand. Looking at their determined faces, I recall the strength of Great Seo Camp and know we are still weak, but a sense of hope rises in my chest. 10 days after our disaster, I finally have the foundation of a core team, and Great Ha Camp is beginning to recover its vitality. The long fist style consists of 4 disciplines: small war, grand war, scattered hand, and combined war. I spend my time mastering these forms, which are renowned for their practicality in combat. Small war centers on close quarters combat and defense, while grand war coordinates the fists, feet, and hips to focus offensive power on a single point. Scattered hand abandons rigid forms entirely, turning the head, elbows, knees, and limbs into lethal weapons based on timing. Combined war provides tactical coordination for fighting multiple enemies at once. All 4 styles can be adapted for weapons, making it a highly versatile martial art. Teaching these forms to the 6 youths, including Wan Xiong, is a straightforward task. I observe their movements as they practice, mapping out their individual strengths. A good teacher knows his tools, and these boys are raw iron. Wan Xiong and Wolpeng have heavy frames suited for the close-quarters defense of small war. Imge, Chubeng, and Seonyang possess leaner, athletic builds ideal for the fluid strikes of grand war, while the agile Yuqiang focuses on the unpredictable scattered hand style. The 6 youths throw themselves into their practice, utilizing the warmth of the beast meat to fuel their movements. Once their training is underway, I grab my stone axe and slip out into the cold night. My previous excursion is interrupted by Great Seo Camp's hunt, and though I secure the carcass, I fail to harvest any fruit. Beast meat is an unpredictable windfall, but the sweet crystal fruit is our daily bread, meaning I must return to the ice shuo tree to replenish our supplies. Our firewood is also dangerously low, with only 15 units remaining from our move. We survive only by extinguishing the little bonfire at night to conserve its 2-unit daily cost. I navigate the path into Redwood Ridge with far more confidence than before, using my memories to guide me. Soon, I locate the massive ice shuo tree standing quietly in the dark forest. No fire means death, and I refuse to freeze. I approach the clearing, scanning the branches for threats. Before climbing up the trunk, the tree is laden with mature fist-sized crystal fruits, each weighing about half a pound. I work quickly, stuffing them into my leather sack until it grows incredibly heavy, only stopping when the bag cannot hold another single piece. I gather over 1,000 pounds of food. Next is the lumbering, so I hoist the heavy sack onto my back and begin walking toward the edge of the forest. I scan the surrounding trees, searching for a suitable source of wood before I leave the ridge. Harvesting firewood in Redwood Ridge is a major challenge. I cannot touch the rare ice shuo trees that feed us, and the Jin Lin trees are too hard for my stone axe, often hosting nesting frost beasts. That leaves only the vermilion frost tree, which accounts for 90% of the forest. However, their monumentally large size presents a massive hurdle. Trees in this hell grow like towers, and I'm just a man with a stone tooth. Measuring 4 to 5 meters in diameter, these wooden giants are too thick for my current tools. Even if I could fell one, carrying it back alone is impossible. I spend over an hour searching the outskirts until I find a relatively small specimen measuring just over 3 meters thick. This particular tree is just over 3 meters thick and 20 meters tall, making it similar in size to the logs we burned back in cave number 1. I set down my sack of crystal fruit, draw my stone axe, and scrape away the thick layer of ice crystals covering the bark. Spitting on my palms, I grip the handle and begin the long, exhausting task of chopping it down. The forest echoes with the steady thud of my axe for 3 agonizing hours before the trunk splinters and crashes into the snow. I stand over the fallen vermilion frost tree, my body soaked in sweat and my muscles aching with exhaustion. Seeing this, I finally understand why my father's team of 13 lumberjacks only brings home a few logs after a full night's work. No wonder they call it a struggle for survival. Felling even the softest vermilion frost tree requires 3 hours of exhausting labor, meaning a single cultivator can only harvest 1 tree per night. My dream of gathering the 200 units of wood to upgrade our bonfire all at once was incredibly naive. Swinging the axe has shattered those expectations, revealing the difficulty of our survival. My camp system updates the resource column in my vision as the tree hits the ground. It registers 5 units of wood, leaving coal, iron, silver, and gold at 0. The realization that an entire night of exhausting labor only yields 5 units is incredibly sobering. I comfort myself with the thought that we must simply increase our numbers, and once Hachian and Wonsong break through, our harvesting speed will triple. Resting in the snow for a few minutes to regain my breath, I stand up to tie the sack of crystal fruit to the log. Hoisting the tree onto my shoulders, I begin the slow journey back to our shelter. 5 wood down, 195 to go. My return with a single log and 1,000 pounds of crystal fruit brings a palpable sense of relief to the cavern. I establish a strict routine, cultivating during the day and foraging in the forest at night. When the first ice schwa tree is picked clean after 3 harvests, I begin pushing further into the unknown outskirts to expand my search. Locating 2 additional ice schwa trees, I make 6 trips to bring our food reserves to over 7,000 pounds. I also harvest 1 log every night, bringing our wood reserves to 87 units after 20 days. On the 24th day, as I drag another log into our cavern, I am greeted by excellent news. My younger brother Hachian and Wonsang both break through at the same time. I let out a heavy sigh of relief as I watched them lift the 5,000-pound wooden stakes one after another, officially bringing our camp's count of logging realm cultivators to 3. Although our strength is still weak compared to the other camps, we have at least made a solid start. During this time, Wolpeng, Imge, and the other 5 have also improved significantly under my training, and as long as they continue steadily, returning to our former strength is only a matter of time. Nothing beats raw muscle when survival is on the line. The next day, just after nightfall, Hachian and Wonsong fasten their stone axes to their waists and follow me closely with excited expressions. I warn them once again that Redwood Ridge is extremely dangerous, reminding them that they must obey my commands and avoid acting on their own. Our main purpose tonight is to familiarize them with our territory, and both of them will need to chop down a tree of their own. Hearing the gravity in my voice, Qian drops his usual sibling familiarity and joins Wonseong in addressing me as head. I nod in approval, leave instructions for Wolpeng and the others to guard our hidden cavern, and lead the way out into the freezing night. The crisp snow reflects the ambient light, clearly revealing the grins on the faces of my 2 companions. I cannot blame them for their excitement, remembering how desperate I felt when I first stepped out of our dark shelter. Except for myself, everyone in the camp has been trapped inside the cave for over a month since my father Hajong disappeared. I often feel that the humans in this frozen world are cursed, forced to hide in the shadows of the ice abyss while dodging colossal frost beasts and murderous strange monsters. It is a hellish existence that makes me wonder if anyone is living with true dignity, though I suspect the powerful rogue camp might be doing better. Before my thoughts can drift too far, we reach the outskirts of Redwood Ridge. In this world, fear is a constant companion, but survival demands action. I outline our 2-part mission, explaining that they need to learn the layout of the outskirts, identify the different tree types, recognize the signs of nearby frost beasts, and memorize the boundaries of Great Ha Camp. They also need to fell a tree each and carry it back before dawn. I guide them through the forest, sharing the layout I have painstakingly memorized over the last 20 nights. During the trek, I point out the locations of our 3 ice shuo trees, the 7 Jinlin trees infested with cold beasts, and the dense groves of vermilion frost trees. Both Hachian and Wonsung remain silent, committing every detail of our 500-meter territory to memory as we walk. When we approach the location of our 3rd ice shuo tree, my heightened senses pick up movement in the distance, while we are still over 100 meters away. I immediately gesture for the others to quiet down, warning them that there are people ahead and that we must observe before making a move. Crouching down in the drifts, I lead my 2 companions as we slowly circle closer, using the tree trunks for cover. It is only when we get within 30 meters that I can clearly make out the figures in the dim light. 4 men are standing near our tree, and one of them carries a large saber. My chest tightens as I recognize the trespassers from Great Soap Camp, marking the 5th time they have invaded our territory since the previous beast incident. Some neighbors only respect boundaries when they are written in blood. The previous 4 incursions were confined to the western edge of our 500-meter wide territory, which lies closest to Great Soap Camp. Now, they have crossed all the way to our eastern border to pillage the 3rd ice shuo tree, showing that their encroachment is growing bolder and deeper. I decide to put an end to this blatant theft, so I stand up and walk toward them, shouting that the trespassers have crossed the line. Behind me, Wonseong and Hachian rise in anger, their eyes flashing as they follow me. Caught in the act, the 4 thieves jump down from the branches, abandoning their harvest to stare at us in surprise. As we close the distance, I scan the dark branches and snowdrifts, warily checking if their camp's dangerous archers are hiding in ambush. The lead trespasser steps forward and asks for our names, his voice sounding like that of a middle-aged man. As I draw closer, I see that all 4 are mature men, and the speaker is carrying the large saber that belonged to the man beheaded by the beast weeks ago. I introduce myself as Ha Hong, the head of Great Ha Camp, prompting the saber wielder to recognize me as Hajong's son. The other three murmur in surprise, noting my youth and realizing that I must have already reached the logging realm to be wandering Redwood Ridge at night. I brush aside their chatter about my father, demanding that they explain why they are stealing our crystal fruit. The most aggressive member of their group steps forward, irritated by my attitude, but the leader raises a hand to hold him back. Even thieves like to play the role of the polite neighbor. The saber wielder introduces himself as Wang Myung, claiming he was a friend of my father and suggesting I call him Uncle Myung. He explains that their camp has run low on food, leaving them no choice but to borrow some crystal fruit from us, which they promise to return once their situation improves. I stare at him in silence, my face darkening as I realize he is treating me as an easily manipulated child. Before I can respond, Ha Qian speaks up in a fury, telling them to admit they are stealing rather than claiming to borrow. He warns them that the rules set by Rogue Camp dictate that trespassing is equivalent to murder, threatening to run back and fetch our father and his lumbering crew to settle the matter. The mention of my father, Ha Zhong, causes the color to drain from the faces of the four trespassers. I resist the urge to smile, silently praising my younger brother for his quick wits in this tense situation. He plays the bluff perfectly, and the expressions on their faces confirm that these four are alone tonight without any backup. I narrow my eyes and stare at Wang Myung's saber, calculating whether we can defeat them, but my quiet contemplation is misinterpreted. Wang Myung assumes I am weighing whether to call my father, and while he is not afraid of fighting three youths, he cannot risk one of us escaping to summon a squad of logging realm warriors. If Ha Zhong were to show up with a dozen men, these four would be dead meat. Fearing a lethal feud, Wang Myung quickly backs down, telling us that there is no need for violence. He orders his men to drop the harvested crystal fruits, promises they will never trespass in Great Ha territory again, and leads his group westward into the dark. The phantom of a dead man is sometimes the best shield. Once they disappear from sight, I turn to my younger brother and give him an enthusiastic thumbs up. He chuckles and admits that we couldn't have won a real fight, so his only option was to scare them off with a lie. I raise my eyebrows but say nothing, knowing that a direct conflict with Great Soak Camp is indeed unwise. They have likely noticed my father's absence over the last month, which explains their sudden boldness, but this encounter should keep them at bay for a while. Still, a bluff only works once or twice before it is exposed, making it critical that Wo Peng and the other youths break through to the logging realm as soon as possible. Ha Qion and Wan Song hoist the abandoned bags of crystal fruit onto their shoulders, grinning when they realize they have harvested over 1,000 pounds of food. I tell them to remember the location of this third tree and lead them deeper into the ridge to harvest our logs for the night. Meanwhile, on a tower-like mountain of black stone covered in ice crystals to the north, the four figures climb a hanging vine to reach their platform summit. They push aside the snow, lift a wooden board, and descend into their massive multi-tiered cavern where a bonfire burns and 300 or 400 people gather in relative comfort. Wang Myung ignores the greetings of his curious comrades and heads to the lower level, where the leader of Great Soak Camp, Soak Chung, and his fierce brother Soak Dong are practicing their archery. He reports the encounter with my father's sons at the eastern ice shua tree. Seok Chung is stunned to hear that we are still active, and Seok Dong angrily demands how a tiny camp like ours could afford the meat to cultivate us into the logging realm. They quickly deduce that we must have stolen the beast carcass they failed to hunt, and Seok Chung's face darkens with rage as he vows to personally lead a team to Redwood Ridge to see what remains of Great Ha Camp. Their suspicion is logical because the camps surrounding Redwood Ridge are far too weak to hunt on their own. Rogue Camp is the only faction capable of consistently harvesting cold beast meat and blood, thanks to their 5 digging realm experts, while the smaller camps must either trade their scarce wood and fruit for meat or rely entirely on finding abandoned carcasses. Frost beasts generally eat their prey alive and leave the dead behind after territorial battles, but finding a fresh carcass in the safe outer zones is a rare stroke of luck that occurs once or twice a year at best. Since we are a small camp, Seokcheong knows we would prioritize any harvested meat for our active lumbering team, rather than feeding the younger generation. Thus, they are absolutely certain that we must have scavenged the carcass they paid 3 lives to weaken. Let them stew in their anger while we build our strength. I remain unaware of Great Sock Camp's resentment, focusing instead on our survival as the days pass in relative peace. By venturing out each night to forage and chop timber, we steadily build our reserves, raising our store of crystal fruit from 7 to 12,000 pounds. For our 154 inhabitants, eating 1 pound a day, this food is enough to sustain us for more than 2 months even if we are forced to stay inside. Our wood pile also increases from 87 units to 210 units, securing both food and heat. The cavern begins to feel alive again, but I know this is only the baseline we enjoyed before my father's team disappeared. Our true bottleneck is cold beast meat, without which we cannot cultivate and grow strong enough to face the threats of this world. If we simply maintain the status quo, it is only a matter of time before we are discovered by frost beasts or slaughtered by a strange monster. Our crystal fruits are not infinite, and with our 3 known ice shuo trees picked clean, we have no way of knowing when they will mature again. Deeper in Redwood Ridge, there are surely larger trees bearing more fruit, but entering the deep forest without sufficient strength is suicide. The 30 pounds of meat I allocated to Wolpung and the other 4 youths have already been consumed. And though they have made progress, they are still far from the logging realm. My own stash of 100 pounds is also gone, leaving me stronger but still distant from the digging realm. To break this deadlock, I need to hunt. If I cannot continue to grow stronger, I will never be able to upgrade our little bonfire, or build the other structures locked within my camp system. Upgrading the fire from level 1 to level 2 requires 200 units of lumber and 50 units of iron, and while wood is plentiful, obtaining metal is impossible without real power. I call Hachion and Wonsung over before nightfall, telling them that we are going to try hunting tonight. Their eyes light up with immediate excitement, as they have spotted sleeping frost beasts during our outings and have repeatedly begged to hunt them. I have always refused because of the danger, but now I am the one taking the initiative. To temper their enthusiasm, I remind them that frost beasts are incredibly dangerous, explaining that this is only a cautious trial and that they must obey my orders without question. Losing either of them is not an option, as they are our camp's only other logging realm combatants. They hear the gravity in my voice and nod solemnly, their excitement cooling into focused discipline. I reach behind my back and hand each of them a small torch, which makes their eyes widen in sudden comprehension. Having explained the properties of the torches to them before, they immediately ask if we are going to use the fire to lure the beasts into fighting each other, so we can clean up the survivors. I nod, pleased by how quickly they have grasped the strategy. A good bait is half the hunt. I confirm that this is indeed the plan, though I warn them that we are entirely dependent on luck. It is a waste to use the small torches this way, as their primary function is to deter and destroy strange monsters, making them premium survival items. But our camp is too weak to confront strange monsters anyway, and the beast's obsession with the flames makes the torches the perfect lure. The conditions for a successful hunt are incredibly steep. We must attract 2 adult beasts, they must engage in a fight to the death, and the victor must be severely weakened. It is a highly inefficient method, but under the circumstances, it is my only option. When night falls, we slip quietly into Redwood Ridge, keeping to the outer areas. Our active territory is only 500 or 600 meters wide, and after weeks of scouting, we have only identified 4 resident frost beasts. There are 2 snowmanes, 1 frost wolf, and a strange goat-like creature that I cannot identify. Since the goat's capabilities are unknown, I decide to ignore it, focusing instead on the frost wolf and the snowmane, which seem evenly matched. I lead the group to a spot midway between the trees where the wolf and the mane reside, plant the small torch, and order Hachion and Wonsung to dig snow pits 50 meters away. Once the torch is lit, we bury ourselves in our respective pits, waiting in silence for the trap to spring. The waiting is always the hardest part. I feel a wave of nervousness wash over me, knowing that the situation is far different from my last encounter. The previous beast was a blind, wounded juvenile, but tonight we are dealing with 2 fully grown adults in their prime. In contrast to my anxiety, Wonsung and Hachion show only raw excitement, their eyes wide as they prepare to witness their first frost beast encounter. We wait in the freezing dark, our breath fogging in the pits until the small torch begins to draw the forest residents. It has only been lit for about 2 minutes when a heavy, rhythmic thumping echoes from the west. The slow, deliberate beat of heavy hooves signals the arrival of our first guest. We hold our breath as a colossal creature emerges from the western tree line, slowly walking toward the burning torch. It stands 2 meters tall at the shoulder and stretches over 4 meters in length, its back armored with jagged ice-like barbs. 2 massive tusks protrude from its jaws, and its fierce eyes scan the clearing even as it focuses on the flame. It scatters a cloud of snow with every heavy stride, making my stomach drop with each thud of its hooves. An adult beast like this must weigh over 1,000 pounds, far larger than the juvenile I fought before. Its tentative, probing steps reveal a high degree of caution and intelligence as it nears the light. A true titan of the frozen forest, the beast sniffs the small torch, basking in the warmth emanating from the fire. Within seconds, its pupils dilate as the healing effects take hold, causing its tense posture to relax. I watch with a heavy heart, wondering about the true nature of the items granted by my camp system, which seem capable of nurturing these deadly monsters. If a mere torch can draw them in like this, our camp's little bonfire would drive them completely insane. I tell myself that the bonfire must remain hidden at all costs until I have the strength to defend it. The beast remains by the flame for over 10 breaths, resting its chin directly in the heat as its fur grows increasingly lustrous. Its aura swells with raw power, confirming that the fire is actively strengthening it. I keep my gaze locked on the clearing, not daring to turn my head and alert the beast. However, as the minutes tick by without any sign of the frost wolf, I begin to worry that the creature is too terrified to show its face. The small torch only burns for 15 minutes, and with nearly 1/3 of that time already gone, I prepare myself for a failed hunt. I console myself with the thought that a waste of resources is normal for a first attempt, but my resignation is cut short by a sudden vibration beneath the frozen ground. Looking toward the east, I see nothing but empty white ground, yet the movement beneath the crust is unmistakable. My pulse spikes as I try to comprehend what is happening below the surface. The forest hides more than just trees. Feeling the vibration as well, the giant beast's peaceful expression instantly morphs into raw savagery. It glares at the trembling ground, its eyes turning crimson as it raises its heavy tusks. A sharp screech pierces the quiet, and a ring of jagged barbs erupts from the snow directly beneath the giant's belly. Even with its quick reflexes, the beast cannot completely avoid the surprise attack, leaving its abdomen sliced open with a wound over 3 feet long. As the spikes retract, the attacker bursts through the crust, revealing the familiar form of an adult frost wolf. The deadly spikes were the barbs ringing its neck, which it used to pierce its prey from below. I am stunned by the wolf's tactical intelligence, having used the snow cover to launch a silent ambush. The injured beast recovers quickly, dark green blood spraying from its belly as it lets out a deafening roar that shakes ice shards from the canopy. Blinded by rage, it charges at the wolf with terrifying speed, its massive head lowered to gore its opponent. The frost wolf wisely avoids a head-on collision, diving back under the snow and darting toward the small torch, which has been knocked aside. I realize the cunning beast intends to seize the prize and escape, rather than engage in a prolonged fight. The enraged beast spots the move as well, valuing the torch far more than its own physical safety. Monsters are greedy, and greed makes them predictable. The giant beast pivots, plunging its tusks deep into the white drifts as it barrels toward the fire. I assume it is gathering momentum, but I quickly realize it is using its tusks to plow and strip the forest floor. By churning the snow and exposing the bare earth, it forces the hidden wolf out of its element. The frost wolf is violently tossed into the air before it can reach the torch, sent crashing into a vermilion frost tree with enough force to snap the trunk. Despite the heavy impact, the wolf springs back to its feet, its crimson eyes locked on its rival, as it bears a mouthful of sharp fangs. Pushing off the ground, it leaps through the air to launch a counterattack. The giant welcomes a test of strength, charging forward to meet the collision head-on. This leap is a feint, however, as the wolf suddenly ducks low to avoid the tusks and sinks its teeth deep into the giant's rear left leg. A piercing shriek echoes through the forest as the wolf tears at the limb, exposing the white bone beneath the flesh. Unable to gore the agile attacker, the giant throws its 1,000-plus-pound body sideways, attempting to crush the wolf against the frozen ground. The impact is brutal, causing blood to spray from the wolf's snout, yet the stubborn predator refuses to release its grip. Thrashing repeatedly, the beast slams its weight down over 100 times, but the wolf holds on with suicidal determination. In the wild, tenacity is just another word for survival. Weakened by blood loss, the creature's struggles gradually grow weaker until the flesh of its leg is completely shredded from calf to thigh. The giant beast finally collapses, the shockwave of its fall shaking the snow from the trees and reaching our hiding spot 50 meters away. While I maintain my composure from previous experiences, Hachian and Wansong stare in absolute horror. They believe that breaking through to the logging realm would grant them safety in the forest, but this display has shattered their confidence. Their silence is absolute as they watch the clearing, only to freeze when the struggle takes an even stranger turn. Having witnessed a beast feign death before, I watch closely for any signs of deception. True feigning of death is a complex biological process, far beyond simply lying still with closed eyes. It requires stopping all respiration, halting the heart and internal organs to pause the pulse, and locking away one's living aura to avoid detection. In my previous life, such physiological control was impossible, but these magical beasts have evolved it as a survival mechanism. To deceive a creature as cautious as a frost wolf, the giant must possess an extraordinary talent for hiding its life force. Even the experienced hunters of Great Silk Camp were fooled by it, showing how convincing the performance can be. In this forest, even a corpse can kill you. My suspicions are confirmed when the wolf releases its grip, and the giant's blank eyes suddenly snap into focus. It draws a ragged breath and rolls its massive frame over, pinning the startled wolf beneath its weight. The wolf tries to bite, but it only succeeds in mouthfuls of the giant's barbed back. Jagged spikes pierce the wolf's mouth and throat, forcing a gurgling roar of agony as dark green blood spills into the snow. The wolf struggles desperately to free itself, but the heavier beast grinds its body down, crushing its opponent. Decisive and brutal, the sheer weight advantage twists the wolf's neck until its head is pressed against its tail. Because of the giant's massive size, the wolf's head is left exposed near the beast's tail. Sensing an opening, the wolf bites down on the sensitive flesh near the shredded hind leg. The intense pain drains the giant's strength, allowing the wolf to slip free and flee into the dark forest without looking back. Left victorious but heavily damaged, the giant beast stands breathing heavily. I realize that as low-level cold beasts, these two species are evenly matched, differing only in their combat styles. The giant relies on brute impact and its feigning death technique, while the frost wolf excels at ambush, agility, and knowing when to retreat. Now, it's my turn to play the predator. I watch the wolf disappear and turn my attention to the limping beast as it crawls toward the small torch. A second of hesitation passes before I order Hachion and Wansong to climb 2 nearby trees and stay put until I call them. I stand up from the snow, draw my stone axe, and charge toward the beast before it can reach the warm flame. If it touches the small torch, the fire will heal its wounds and restore its strength. which I cannot allow. My movements draw the beast's attention, as sound travels easily in the silent frozen forest, but the titan ignores me, dismissing me as a harmless insect. It continues its slow, painful march toward the fire, its mangled hind leg dragging in the snow. Its severe injury slows its pace, allowing me to close the gap and catch up to it from behind. The beast turns its head to glare at me, its hot breath steaming in the freezing air. Facing an adult frost beast directly for the first time makes my pulse spike, even though I know it has lost 7 or 8 tenths of its strength. I take a few deep breaths, forcing myself to stay calm, and meet its gaze with my own fierce resolve. Enraged by the defiance of a mere insect, the beast's eyes turn blood red and it lunges at me. Its broken hind leg robs it of its usual speed, making the charge clumsy and slow. A slow titan is just a bigger target. I narrow my eyes, choosing to stand my ground instead of dodging the charge. Biting down on the handle of my stone axe to free my hands, I spread my arms to grab the beast's long tusks. The impact is staggering, pushing me backward 5 or 6 meters despite the creature's weakened state. I brace my legs against a stout tree behind me to absorb the momentum, my muscles screaming under the strain. My 6,400 pounds of force barely stops the charge, making me realize a healthy adult must strike with over 10,000 pounds of force. No wonder hunting these beasts requires reaching the digging realm. I hold on tight, keeping my grip on the tusks as the beast opens its gaping mouth. Releasing my right hand, I grab the axe from my mouth and swing my body to the left to dodge the 5 or 6 meter long tongue that shoots from its throat. The ice cone tip pierces the tree trunk behind me, but it quickly softens and curves back to wrap around my neck. Remembering the beheaded swordsman from Great Sog Camp, I release my left hand from the tusk, grip the axe with both hands, and leap high to strike down on the soft tongue. Although the stone blade is dull compared to steel, it is enough to sever the vulnerable muscle, drawing a scream of agony from the beast. I press the advantage, hacking at its open mouth and driving it backward while yelling for the 2 boys to get down and cut its right hind leg. Ha Qian and Wan Song leap from their branches, landing behind the giant as the cold glint of my axe reflects the snow. I swing my weapon down with all my strength. Got it. This snow-maned beast proved to be extremely cautious throughout our entire grueling encounter in the dense forest. Even when it fought the wild frost wolves in the past and sustained severe bleeding injuries, it had never once exposed its soft tongue to danger. Evidently, these wild frost beasts who had roamed the frozen jungle for their entire lives were highly experienced in combat, keeping their trump cards hidden until a matter of life and death forced their hand. Fortunately, I had planned my moves to exploit this specific instinct from the beginning of our clash. My strategy of guiding the rampaging beast toward the massive Jinlin tree was designed to force its tongue to pierce the trunk, trapping its muscle and exposing its greatest weakness. Since my crude stone axe had no hope of cutting through its thick armored hide, the soft tongue remained my only viable target for a fatal blow. While a frost wolf could use its sharp claws to tear at its abdomen and its teeth to rip its leg muscles, I knew my only hope for a fatal strike lay in that soft, vulnerable tissue. Success depended entirely on this single soft point. In this frozen wasteland, meat is the only currency that matters. With my basic physical strength having grown to 6,400 pounds of force during this intense training period, I decided to gamble everything on this single opportunity. The massive risk paid off, proving that these monstrous creatures of the cold are not invincible if we use our heads and coordinate our attacks. While I fiercely engaged the beast from the front to draw its fury and keep its attention, Ha Qian and Wan Song frantically hacked at its injured left hind leg with their heavy stone axes. Despite its incredibly strong will to survive, the giant 1,000-pound beast finally collapsed in the deep snow with a heavy thud, leaving the 3 of us completely exhausted. A shared sense of elation and pure joy washed over us as we stared at our massive prize, gasping for breath in the freezing air and feeling the adrenaline slowly leave our bodies. Our hands trembled as we let go of our weapons. The victory was hard won, but it was ours. Wan Xiong breathed heavily, his chest heaving as he asked if the massive carcass weighed over 1,000 pounds. I carefully checked the gargantuan body and replied that it was at least 1,400 pounds, and probably even more than that. This catch meant that Wolpung and the other 5 promising youths in our camp would finally have enough cold beast meat to break through to the logging realm. Knowing that the fresh scent of blood would quickly draw other predators to our location, I did not let the excitement distract me from the danger. I immediately extinguished the still burning small torch, ordered the 2 boys to lift the heavy snow-maned beast, and hurried back toward our cave. The journey through the dark forest was filled with extreme tension, since any wandering frost beast or hostile hunter could have easily overwhelmed our exhausted group. We moved in silence, ears strained for any sound of pursuit. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Fortunately, the dense forest remained quiet, and we reached our destination without any dangerous incidents. After exchanging the secret password at the gate, The guards opened the cave entrance, allowing us to drag the massive snowmane beast inside. Once the heavy body was placed on the stone ground, the warm glow of the central bonfire illuminated its sharp fangs and massive claws, and a wave of relief washed over me. Crowds of campers quickly gathered around the carcass, whispering in awe at the size of the beast and marveling at my strength. Some compared my actions to those of my late father, Ha Zhong, noting that the camp had never seen such a large beast even during his time as head. Their eyes were wide with excitement as they touched the thick white fur. This catch would feed the camp for days. Hope is a drug, and I am the one supplying it. I was familiar with their reverent looks, which had become more frequent with every successful hunt I conducted. The reverence itself did not concern me, but I cared deeply about the hope that was beginning to spark in their eyes. When I first transmigrated to this cold world, the lack of hope in Great Ha Camp was suffocating. Even under my father's leadership, when crystal fruits were abundant and the heating was stable, the people resembled walking corpses. Satiety and warmth could keep them from freezing or starving, but those resources did not provide them with a future. They had spent their entire lives hiding in the dark shadows, terrified of frost beasts, strange monsters, and the deadly cold that ruled the surface. Survival was a chore rather than a life. Security and dignity were luxuries they could not afford without acquiring power. Cold beast meat was their only hope of becoming stronger, but my father had rarely been able to secure it for the camp. Only a select few had ever received a share under the old distribution system. Now, in the 2 months since I had become the head, I had already brought back 2 snowmane beasts. This sudden abundance of meat convinced them that their turn to cultivate would eventually come. As the logging realm reserves grew and the lumbering team expanded, the camp would secure even more resources to protect ourselves. We were slowly building a foundation for our survival in the ice abyss. Every small step mattered. The campers held their breath as the cold beast meat was skinned and deboned, and a cheer erupted when the final weight was announced at 1,270 pounds. I stood before them under the bonfire light, announcing a new 352 distribution system to govern all future hunts. 30% of the harvest would go to the active hunting team, 50% would be reserved for the logging realm candidates, and the remaining 20% would go to any youth between 15 and 22 whose basic strength reached 1,000 pounds. Regardless of age or gender, anyone who exceeded 2,000 pounds of strength could join the reserves to train. Finally, I declared that the odd 70 pounds from this catch would be roasted immediately as a treat for the entire camp, sparking another wave of excitement. I'm replacing my father in everyone's hearts, 1 pound of meat at a time. The crowd fell silent at the announcement of this ratio, stunned by the fairness of the system and the real chance for anyone to rise. Tears of joy ran down several faces as they realized they were finally permitted to cultivate. Someone in the back shouted that the head was mighty, and the entire cave erupted into a roaring cheer, with some even kneeling to worship me. I did not stop them, understanding that their gratitude came from a place of deep desperation. Under my father, resources were hoarded for the active lumbering team and their direct descendants. He was not short-sighted, but his complete lack of a reliable hunting method forced him to scavenge and prioritize the few active fighters. Changing this policy was necessary to strengthen the camp's defenses. My excitement went beyond the meat itself, since I had proven that hunting with the small torches was a viable strategy for us. Though luck had played a role in this hunt, we now had a repeatable method to harvest frost beasts. Before I possessed the strength to face these monsters head-on, this tactical advantage was priceless. The Redwood Ridge was not exclusively dominated by rogue camp anymore. Great Ha Camp was finally ready to hunt, and we would refuse to survive on their scraps in the future. Our transition from prey to predators in this frozen territory was just beginning. My approach differed completely from the traditional methods of the previous lumbering teams. While my decisions were backed by the system's abundant resources, the campers did not know that, viewing me as a selfless and capable leader. Fervent expressions greeted me whenever I walked through the cave, and every greeting of head was spoken with genuine respect. I did not try to discourage their worship, knowing that in this harsh environment, a symbol of hope was necessary for survival. Hiding in the shadows for years had left them in a state of constant despair. Giving them something to believe in was the first step toward building a real camp in this wasteland. They needed to know that we could stand against the cold together. There is no room for humility when you are trying to build an empire in the snow. After setting aside the 70 pounds for the feast, my 3-5-2 ratio left me with 120 pounds of pulled beast meat. At my current rate of consumption, this meat would only sustain my cultivation for half a month. Wolpung and the other 5 candidates also received 120 pounds each, which I calculated would be insufficient for their breakthrough. The shortage of meat remained a critical issue, and our hunting could not stop. Fortunately, as long as we kept collecting timber from the woods, we would not run out of small torches. We needed to keep our furnace burning to stay alive. Wood collection was our lifeline. I instructed the lumbering team to avoid direct combat with any exceptionally strong frost beasts they encountered. As long as they could safely lure the creatures to our traps, we would eventually secure a harvest. Soon the aroma of roasting meat filled the cave, and the campers ate with expressions of pure intoxication. Watching them enjoy the feast touched something deep inside me. In my previous life, a simple meal of meat was taken for granted, but here it was a rare luxury. Suffering from amyotrophic lateral sclerosis had made me bitter, causing me to hate the world and eventually take my own life. My body had failed me back then, locking me in a useless shell while my mind raged. Yet these people endured far worse conditions, without a single complaint. Perhaps my second chance is less of a gift and more of a responsibility. While Great Ha Camp was celebrating in the cave, a very different scene was unfolding in the outskirts of Redwood Ridge. Seok Cheong was leading 12 hunters from the Great Seok lumbering team through our territory, his face growing increasingly grim. The biting wind howled through the skeletal trees, and frost coated their eyelashes. His hot-tempered brother, Sokdong, was growing furious after 3 days of searching without finding a single track. Wang Miang, clutching his broadsword, suggested heading toward the earth slope to locate our camp directly. The suggestion brought a tense silence over the group, as violating another camp's secrecy was a dangerous transgression. Under the extreme resource scarcity of the ice abyss, camps guarded their locations to avoid being raided or worse during desperate times. Entering another camp's territory without permission was seen as a declaration of war. Human nature under resource scarcity was extremely terrifying, and when food ran out, humans themselves were not inedible. Because our camps were neighbors, the Great Seok hunters knew our general vicinity, but they had never sought our exact coordinate. The hunter leader shook his head, rejecting the idea of starting a blood feud. He remembered that my father, Ha Zhang, had helped them in the past when they lacked hunters for hunting. Memories of past cooperation made him want to teach us a lesson about stealing their prey, rather than destroy us. The thought of starting a bloody war over a single beast carcass seemed foolish. His thoughts were interrupted when Sokdong pointed into the dense forest, spotting 13 figures approaching. In the frozen woods, a sudden meeting is rarely a friendly one. Seok Chung identified the group as my father's old lumbering team, consisting of 13 men. The sight of the team immediately reignited the rage of the Great Seok hunters, who blamed them for the deaths of their 3 companions. His hot-tempered brother and Wang Miang stepped forward, shouting accusations and demanding the snowmane meat as compensation. They threatened to use their bows if my father did not offer an explanation. However, the 13 figures did not react to the threats, standing in silence with vacant stares. A strange, stiff smile slowly spread across my father's face, appearing completely unnatural. The absolute silence of the figures was unnerving. Nobody moved a muscle in the freezing cold. His brother cursed at them, demanding to know if they were deaf, and took 2 steps forward. The rigid expressions of the Great Ha hunters and their silent posture in the shadows made the hunter leader's instincts scream. Suddenly, a sharp sound resembling a silver needle cutting the air sliced through the quiet woods. Seok Chung retreated instantly, drawing his bow and shouting for his men to run. His warning came too late for 3 of his hunters. They froze in place, their pupils dilating as tiny red dots appeared on their foreheads, and they collapsed dead in the snow. Fresh blood seeped from the wounds, staining the white drifts below. Fear makes men do foolish things, but it also makes them dangerous. The hunter leader was horrified by the sudden deaths, but his combat experience kept him from panicking. Seeing my father's puppet and the 12 controlled hunters spreading out to surround them, he ordered Seokdong to find cover on the left. Wang Miyoung led the remaining 7 men to block the advance, while the Seok brothers climbed 2 large trees to provide cover with their bows. The Great Seok hunters executed their standard formation, with the melee fighters stalling the enemy while the archers struck from the shadows. Our saber fighter tightened his grip on his weapon, his fear transforming into a desperate fury. He charged at my father's puppet, unleashing a strike that kicked up a wall of snow. The heavy blade whistled through the freezing night, carrying the full weight of his anger. Powerful and swift, the blow cut through the night sky with a sharp slicing sound. That fierce wind generated by the powerful force stirred up the accumulated snow several meters high, reaching my father's puppet in an instant. Wang Myong brought down this strike with almost all his strength, believing it would at least take a layer of the puppet's skin. Unfortunately, my father's puppet simply sidestepped the blade and grabbed the saber with its bare hand, forcing the weapon deep into the snow. Wang Myong was stunned by the speed, wondering if my father had somehow broken through to the digging realm before his death. The puppet counterattacked with a fierce punch, which Wang Myong could not dodge. He tried to raise his arm to block, but his reflexes were too slow. A leader's first duty is to die away from his people. Instead of fleeing, a triumphant smile appeared on Wang Myong's face as 4 iron-tipped arrows flew from the trees. The arrows struck the puppet's hand and face, with one embedding 10 centimeters deep into its right eye. Yet the puppet did not flinch, its fist caving in Wang Myong's skull and killing him instantly. Dread paralyzed the remaining 7 hunters and the Seok brothers as the puppet stood up, the arrow in its eye jiggling as it smiled at them. The leader screamed for his men to run, realizing that this entity was the strange monster of Redwood Ridge, rather than my father. He fired his remaining arrows to cover the retreat, but the puppets ignored the wounds and kept pursuing. The 2 slowest Great Seok hunters were caught and hacked to pieces by the wooden axes. Those 5 survivors fled behind their leader, who deliberately guided them away from their own camp to protect their families. As they fled, the needle-like sound cut through the forest once more. The hunter leader recognized the danger. ducking his head and shouting a warning to the survivors. His younger brother and 2 others managed to duck, but the last 2 hunters were too slow. They froze instantly, their foreheads pierced by red dots as they collapsed into the snow. Both bodies slid into the drifts, left behind as the chase continued. True strength is silent and swift. The loss of 11 men from his 16-member team pushed Seok-cheong to the brink of despair. With only 5 survivors remaining and their physical strength rapidly decreasing, they knew their speed was getting slower and slower. In contrast, the monsters behind them showed no signs of slowing down, pursuing them relentlessly. Just as the monsters closed in on the remaining 5, a sharp, youthful voice echoed from the trees, declaring that they had finally found the beast. That sudden voice brought a sliver of hope to the hunter leader's desperate heart. He looked up, his eyes searching the dark branches for their savior. The freezing air burned his lungs as he waited. A dazzling sword light sliced through the darkness, severing the heads of 2 puppets in an instant. Out of the shadows emerged a young man in his early 20s, wearing a complete set of high-quality beast skins that made the tattered Great Seok hunters feel deeply ashamed. While the survivors wore only old, tattered beast skin skirts, or even dry-leaf clothes made by drying leaves and piecing them together, this newcomer had the appearance of a lord. He moved with effortless grace, his silver longsword creating a blur of light that decapitated the remaining 10 puppets. The young man stood before the puppet of my father, commenting on the crude creations, when the needle sound rang out again. Warnings were shouted by the hunter leader, but the youth had already reacted, locking his gaze on the top of a large tree. His companions quickly caught up, their weapons ready as they took up positions. The air grew tense as they prepared for another clash. He ordered Lee Ho and Nam Myung to charge the tree, launching himself forward to slice the massive Jin Lin tree in half. The upper part of the tree crashed down, exposing a golden interior that shocked the onlookers. A Jin Lin tree was notoriously hard, requiring 10 hours of continuous chopping for a normal hunter. Yet he had severed it with one blow. The cut trunk oozed a sticky, amber-scented sap that glistened under the snow. Leaping from the falling branches, a black figure tried to flee into the deeper forest. The 3 experts quickly positioned themselves to block its escape, identifying it as an elementary craftsman ghoul. They warned each other to be careful of its wood puppets and hidden threads. These entities were known for their cunning tricks and ability to control multiple corpses simultaneously. 3 hunters, 1 beast, and no room for error. Nam Myung, the head of Rogue Camp, held his spear, while Lee Ho wielded a wild goose wing saber, and Yang Nyang prepared his sword. The wood puppet ghoul appeared as a hunched old man in black robes, with a decaying face. It held a small 3-inch knife in its left hand, and a coil of transparent white thread in its right. Crimson pupils filled its decaying face with a bloodthirsty desire. Roaring, the monster released a wave of transparent threads, forcing the 3 to dodge frantically as the humming lines sliced through nearby branches. Yang Young's superior silver sword cut through the threads, allowing him to press the attack. His powerful sword strikes created a storm of blade momentum, forcing the ghoul back against a tree. Lee Ho and the rogue leader broke through the threads to launch a coordinated assault from 3 directions. The spear of the rogue leader was the first to pierce the wood puppet ghoul's chest. However, the sharp spearhead stopped abruptly after piercing its target. Unable to advance even an inch, Lee Ho's saber struck its legs with a dull metallic clang, failing to cause any damage. Only the silver sword posed a real threat, forcing the ghoul to activate its trap. Ground tremors shook the nearest tree violently, appearing to come alive as its branches moved. 7 more trees rose from the snow, their branches extending to surround the 3 hunters completely. A cage of dark wood formed around the team, blockading their escape routes. This sudden reversal caught the rogue leader by surprise, while Lee Ho looked to Yang Nyang for orders. Yang Young ordered them to break the trees to avoid getting trapped. Nam Myung and Lee Ho hacked at the branches, while Yang Young severed the trunks of several trees, but the effort was in vain. The trees collapsed, losing their temporary vitality, and the wood puppet ghoul was gone. Yang Yang warned the rogue leader that if the craftsman ghoul reached the intermediate rank, the camps around Redwood Ridge would have no hope of survival. Seok-cheong and his 4 remaining men approached, kneeling in gratitude for their lives. The rogue leader helped the hunter leader up, telling him to thank Yang Yang and Lee Ho from Booksale Town. They were the ones who had done the heavy fighting to save them. A savior is just a master we have yet to serve. Seok-cheong and his companions kowtowed to the 2 scouts, shocked that the head of Rogue Camp addressed them as sirs. Both scouts showed clear disdain when the word camp was mentioned, though they did not explain. The rogue leader asked why the monster was called a craftsman ghoul and why its breakthrough would doom them. Lee Ho mocked their ignorance of the wider world, laughing at their provincial behavior. Yang Yang explained that they lived in the Ice Abyss. This name was recognized by all humans living in the 9 towns at the southern foot of the Manhwa mountain range. The vast wilderness they called home was merely a small corner of this frozen region. Both scouts showed deep reverence when mentioning the great Lord Yang Jun, warning the rogue leader that using his name without the proper title was a capital offense. The rogue leader apologized quickly, sensing the killing intent in Yang Nyong's tone. Yang Nyong explained that the Moao mountain range was the largest range in the southern region, and the 9 towns were the 9 largest camps. When the rogue leader guessed their population was over 5,000, the scouts laughed of his provincial ignorance. Li Ho proudly declared that each of the 9 towns had a population exceeding 100,000, and that they came from Bukseol town. This revelation left Nam Myong and the other camp survivors frozen in shock, their minds unable to comprehend such a massive number. The sheer scale of a camp housing over 100,000 people is something Nam Myong, Sok Chung, and the other leaders simply cannot comprehend. Managing small camps of only a few hundred people, they struggle to imagine the logistics of feeding such a population, the extreme security costs involved, and the immense quantity of cold beast blood and meat required to sustain them. Seok Cheung, unable to contain his confusion, asks how such a massive group could possibly find a cave large enough to shelter everyone from the deadly light. In their eyes, humans must always hide in the dark to survive. Yang Nyong and Li Ho, the scouts from Bukseol town, exchange knowing looks and shake their heads, thinking of the ancient sayings about insects that have never seen ice and frogs that have never left their well. The young scout tells them that not all humans must live in the shadows, suggesting that if any of them are ever fortunate enough to qualify for entry into Bukseol town, they will understand, though he quietly adds to himself that the possibility is practically non-existent for them. Hearing this, the faces of Nam Myung, Sok Chung, and the other leaders darken considerably at this blunt assessment. Compared to the others, Nam Myung understands the scout's words all too well. His rogue camp is the only intermediate-sized settlement in the Redwood Ridge area, and though the 8 smaller camps have repeatedly proposed merging with him, he has never dared to accept them. He knows that expansion is impossible without the strength to back it up, as a larger population requires more resources than they can currently gather. Rogue Camp currently supports only 5 digging realm and 47 cultivators of the first realm, and the cold beast meat they hunt each month is barely enough to sustain their own members. Merging with small camps would introduce too many ordinary people, causing the demand for crystal fruit to grow rapidly, and forcing their hunters to search for ice shuo trees at great personal risk. In this frozen wasteland, a leader who takes on more mouths than he can feed is just signing a collective death warrant. Since the strongest members of these small camps are only in the logging realm, they completely lack the capability to hunt frost beasts. Their inclusion would not improve hunting output but would instead deplete the existing cold beast meat supply. Therefore, the rogue leader and his people have always refused mergers, knowing that blind expansion would make the camp unmanageable and lead to internal strife or slaughter. They realize that Bukseol town must enforce incredibly strict qualifications for entry for these very reasons. Sok Chong silently agrees, realizing that even if the rogue camp head possesses digging realm strength, the young scouts are far more powerful, indicating the terrifying depth of Bukseol town's forces. Moreover, neither leader can bear the thought of abandoning their families and companions to join a larger town alone. A camp resembles a fire. If you throw too much damp wood on it at once, you will only put it out. Seeing their quiet dejection, Yang Yong decides to change the subject and explain the nature of the wood puppet ghoul they encountered. The leaders immediately prick up their ears, eager for any information about the monster. Yang Yong reveals that in the prehistoric ancient abyss era, this world was completely different from the frozen hell it is today. During that era, the daytime lasted 12 hours, the temperature was pleasant, and the ice abyss had 4 distinct seasons. Prehistoric humans controlled powerful tools, ruled as the undisputed overlords of the land, and could move freely during both day and night. The soil was fertile, cultivation was possible everywhere, and food was so abundant that settlements of millions or even tens of millions were common. Most of the frost beasts back then were harmless, with 99% of them serving merely as food for humanity. To the listening camp leaders, this description paints a picture of an impossible paradise, a dreamlike celestial palace they can scarcely conceive. They have spent their entire lives shivering in dark caves, making it difficult to comprehend a world of warmth and abundance. Yet the longing for such a beautiful existence stirs something deep within their hearts. Yang Yong continues, explaining that after the prehistoric civilization collapsed for unknown reasons, strange monsters and frost beasts emerged to become humanity's nightmare. Some believe human arrogance angered the gods, while others suggest humanity brought about their own ruin. But the true cause remains a mystery. What is certain is that these strange monsters all originate from the ancient abyss era, which is the only place we can find traces of prehistoric civilization. These entities are divided into 5 distinct classes, namely the craftsman, nightmare, vicious, divine, and demonic types. Hearing about a world where humans ruled the day makes our cave feel even smaller. The wood puppet ghoul haunting Redwood Ridge belongs to the craftsman type, created from the spirits of highly skilled craftsmen from the prehistoric era. These monsters possess bizarre killing preferences and employ mysterious, unpredictable methods to slaughter their prey. The ghoul specifically is a puppet master from the prehistoric era, skilled in creating and controlling various wooden constructs that resemble humans, to gain their trust. It remains hidden in the shadows, directing its creations to kill while it stays completely safe from harm. Yang Yong warns that all strange monsters evolve by continuously killing humans, meaning the ghoul and its creations will only grow stronger over time. While its puppets currently only exhibit strength of the first realm, they will eventually surpass this level if left unchecked. He shares that Buxail Town once hunted an intermediate craftsman ghoul called the Tailor Ghoul, which possessed a pair of scissors capable of shredding dozens of digging realm cultivators in an instant. The monster also used a set of needles and thread to sew shut the orifices of a cold resistance level expert, who suffocated to death shortly after. Hearing about the cold resistance level leaves the two camp leaders feeling deeply confused, as they have never heard of such a realm. Yang Young explains that this realm lies directly above the digging realm, and those who achieve it can withstand the extreme daytime cold, to move freely outside. The revelation that there are human warriors capable of walking under the frozen sun fills the leaders with awe. They realize how small their world is and how limited their own strength truly remains. The threat of the wood puppet ghoul evolving into an intermediate monster looms over them as a death sentence. They know that if it completes its evolution, no one in the Redwood Ridge area will survive. Knowing that their camps stand no chance against such a monster, the rogue leader makes a desperate decision, swallowing his pride and kneeling before the scouts. A monster that sews eyes and mouth shut is a warning that our survival is temporary unless we grow stronger. He begs them, as fellow members of the human race, to help them destroy the ghoul, promising that they will provide whatever resources the scouts desire in exchange. Seok Cheong, recognizing that this is their only chance for survival, immediately leads his 4 companions to kneel alongside the rogue camp leader. Yang Yong and Li Ho exchange brief, satisfied smiles before quickly resuming their solemn expressions to maintain their authority. The young leader steps forward to help him to his feet, explaining that they are scouts for the Buxail Town Army, tasked with mapping the northern territories. Since they have met by fate, they cannot stand by and watch their fellow humans be slaughtered by a strange monster. However, he adds that the wood puppet ghoul is extremely cunning and cannot be defeated without a coordinated plan. He demands as their sole condition for assistance that Rogue Camp and all the surrounding settlements submit completely to their command. The rogue leader agrees without hesitation for his own camp, then turns to Seok Cheong to gauge his reaction. Seok Cheong nods in agreement, acknowledging that if the ghoul is not eliminated, none of us will survive the winter, anyway. The rogue leader promises to recruit the other 5 camps in the area, believing they will cooperate once they understand the stakes. Yang Yong quickly corrects him, stating that there are only 4 camps left for them to contact. He is momentarily stunned, but Seok Cheong points toward the frozen corpses lying in the snow nearby. Recognizing my father's body among the dead, the rogue leader realizes that the Great Ha camp must have already been annihilated by the monster. The scouts instruct him to summon the remaining 4 camp leaders to Rogue Camp within the next few days to establish their new command. Kneeling before outsiders is a bitter pill, but to them, survival justifies any humiliation. They order him to organize all active cultivators into a unified patrol force to begin searching the forest. In 10 days, the rogue leader agrees to the instructions and invites the scouts to return to Rogue Camp to rest, while Seok Cheong departs for his own camp, agreeing to meet again in 3 days. Their assumption that my camp has been wiped out is entirely logical, given the harsh realities of survival in the ice abyss. A small camp relies on 2 essential resources to survive, namely crystal fruit for food and timber to keep the heating fires burning. While a person can endure hunger for a few days if fruit runs out, running out of wood means freezing to death during the very first night. Since my father and his entire lumbering team perished, the other leaders naturally assume my people have already frozen to death. However, they completely overlook my presence and the unique capabilities I bring to the camp. Far from being destroyed, the Great Ha camp is thriving and making rapid progress under my leadership. One night, as I return from a frustrating and empty-handed hunt, I am greeted at the cave entrance by an excited Seon Young. He eagerly informs me that he has finally broken through to the first realm, making him the last of our first 5 candidates to do so. I pat Seon Young on the shoulder and smile, telling him that I am glad to see his anxiety disappear and that he can join our wood collection starting tomorrow. Wol Peng, Imgae, and the other hunters burst into laughter, causing Seon Young to blush with embarrassment. He explains that he felt he was merely a useless freeloader, consuming the cold beast meat we risked our lives to harvest without being able to help. My smile fades at his words, and I ask him if he truly believes that everyone in our camp who has not broken through is a burden. They write us off as dead, but we are growing stronger in the dark. I turn to my brother Hachion and the other hunters, demanding to know if they share this perspective. The tense silence that follows confirms my fears, as this harsh mindset is deeply ingrained in every winter camp. They believe that ordinary people who cannot go out to gather resources are simply drains on their limited supplies. The campers who cannot fight are seen as liabilities who consume wood and fruit without contributing anything of value. Yet, I refuse to let this cold logic tear our community apart from within. In this frozen world, selfishness is a disease that kills faster than frostbite. The hunter's silence is deafening, reflecting the growing dissatisfaction that has been brewing in their hearts. Since my first successful hunt, I've used my small torch to secure 4 more frost beasts, bringing in nearly 5,000 pounds of cold beast meat. Despite this abundance, I have kept the 352 distribution rules unchanged, continuing to share the meat with the ordinary camp members. The active hunters believe they should receive 90% of the harvest to accelerate their own cultivation, viewing the others as dead weight. Seeing their silent agreement, I decide this is the perfect opportunity to address the issue before it creates a permanent rift. I look directly at my brother and ask him to explain how he believes the cold beast meat should be distributed. A camp divided by greed will freeze faster than one divided by the wind. Ha Qian eagerly speaks, proposing that we return to the old system where 90% of the cold beast meat is distributed among the active hunters, and only 10% is left for the others. He argues that this will allow the core team to grow stronger quickly, which will in turn help us secure even more prey in the future. Wan Xiang supports the proposal, adding that we must also reduce the daily crystal fruit allowance from 2 to 1 per person to prevent a food shortage. He points out that the 3 ice shuo trees have not yet produced new fruit, and at our current consumption rate, our stored fruit will last only a little over a month. I listen quietly, recognizing that the hunters are eager to restore the rules my father used when resources were scarce. With 8 first-tier cultivators now in our cave, we are close to the 13 active members my father had, making the old rules seem natural to them. Instead of answering directly, I ask the 7 hunters what their individual goals are. Ha Qian is the first to speak, stating that he wants to survive, while the others chime in with similar desires to ensure their mothers, brothers, and sisters have enough to eat. I then ask them why we bother risking our lives to hunt frost beasts if survival and basic sustenance are their only goals. We could simply focus on harvesting crystal fruits and gathering wood to survive without the constant danger of hunting. My question leaves them completely stunned, as they have never questioned the underlying purpose of our efforts. I explain that they want to become stronger because they know strength is the only true guarantee of survival in this frozen world. My next question asks them if I should have kept the first snow mane carcass for myself, to maximize my own strength instead of sharing it, which leaves them silent and filled with shame. If a leader eats alone, he will eventually stand alone when the monsters arrive. I explain that my own goal is to become stronger and survive, and that it is the same for them and the rest of the members gathered near the bonfire. These frost beasts are far more powerful than we are, meaning that even a team of 13 active hunters, like the one my father led, was not enough to guarantee survival. Sharing the cold beast meat with them because I knew that one person's strength is insufficient to survive in the ice abyss. My intention in distributing the meat to the camp's youth is to ensure that more people achieve their first breakthrough, expanding our active force. If we can field 40 or 50 active cultivators, we can easily face frost beasts without fear, as we can easily surround and overwhelm them. This explanation makes their eyes light up as they realize the potential of a larger, unified force. I explained that the old system worked for my father because he lacked a reliable hunting method, forcing him to hoard resources for the few active fighters to keep our people alive. However, our situation is completely different now that my small torch provides us with a steady harvest of cold beast meat. Sticking to the old rules would only slow down our development and limit our future capabilities. With more first-tier members, we can divide our labor into specialized teams for hunting, lumbering, fruit gathering, and surveying. This division of labor will maximize our efficiency and drastically increase our overall resource intake. I stand up and point at the camp members, asking the hunters if they would want us to starve their own families if they were to perish in the forest. The question makes them tremble, as they realize that their proposed rules would directly harm their own loved ones if tragedy struck. They lower their heads in deep embarrassment, realizing how short-sighted and selfish their thoughts have been. I tell them that we must raise the overall strength of our camp, including their families, so that we can face both frost beasts and strange monsters together. If everyone here reaches the first realm, we can avoid hiding in the shadows as helpless prey. Our goal is to survive, but we must live with dignity and confidence as human beings rather than trembling in the dark. The other camp members have gathered around the bonfire, their faces filled with emotion as they listen to my words. I declare that sooner or later, I will make the frost beasts and strange monsters kneel and tremble before the great hot camp. Survival is just the starting point. Our real goal is to conquer this frozen world. I have never been a man who tolerates a life without dignity, which is why I chose to end my own life in my previous world when my condition deteriorated. Suffering from amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, I knew that becoming completely paralyzed and helpless would strip away my humanity. Reborn into this brutal winter world, I find that achieving a dignified life is incredibly difficult. With hunger, cold, and monsters constantly threatening us, I realized early on that I could never survive this frozen hell alone, and that our only hope lies in uniting our strength. Every person in our camp yearns for a decent life, and cold beast meat is their ticket to that future. Before I began distributing the meat, the cave was filled with a stagnant, lifeless energy. But now the campers are actively exercising to earn a spot on the team. The sudden vitality of the campers confirms my belief that everyone here is eager to change their fate if given the opportunity. While other camps are limited by resources and cannot expand, our small torch allows us to take an unconventional path toward growth. My current prestige would allow me to simply dictate these new rules, but I chose to explain the reasoning to the hunters instead. I know that a system built on forced obedience will only breed resentment and lead to internal conflict between the active fighters and the ordinary campers. Silence fills the cave, while I allow them to process my words and grasp the long-term benefits of my development plan. Wan's song is the first to speak, agreeing that collective strength is the only way to prevent another tragedy like the one that took my father. A tyrant can rule a cave of slaves, but it takes a leader to build a camp of warriors. Wolpeng, Imge, and the other 5 hunters quickly voice their agreement, recognizing that cultivating more first-tier combat power is the right path. Even my brother Ha Qian finally yields, admitting that prioritizing the collective strength of our camp is far more important than short-term individual gains. A sense of relief washes over me as I see the genuine approval on their faces, knowing that a major internal crisis has been averted. The distribution of benefits is always a difficult problem, but for our camp, prioritizing the collective is the only logical choice. We must teach our people how to fish, rather than simply feeding them, helping them become stronger to improve our overall survival. As our numbers grow, the accumulation of resources will accelerate, allowing us to support even more people. Furthermore, I need a large and stable population to gather the massive amount of resources required for my camp system upgrades. While my system currently only features the little bonfire, the requirements for future buildings will undoubtedly be colossal. This new distribution rule is my first step toward transforming Great Ha Camp from a simple survival shelter into a thriving settlement. With the dispute resolved, I tell the hunters that it is almost dark and we must prepare to go out. The others nod, grabbing their weapons, with Seonyang looking particularly excited as he touches the stone axe at his waist. He is about to experience his very first outing, and his enthusiasm is contagious as we prepare to face the cold. The cold is waiting for us, but this time, we are bringing a bigger fire. With our lumbering team expanded to 8 first-tier cultivators, our safety in the Redwood Ridge outskirts has improved significantly. We walk without the extreme hesitation of our early days, though we still maintain caution as we march through the wind and drifting snow. Our steps lead us to the location of the first ice shuo tree, only to find its branches completely bare of fruit. Hachian climbs the trunk to inspect it, reporting that the stems from our previous harvest have just begun to sprout. He compares it to the other 2 trees and estimates that it will take another 2 months for the next batch of crystal fruits to mature. I calculate the numbers in my head, realizing that 3 harvests a year from 3 trees will only yield 54,000 pounds of fruit. Since each crystal fruit weighs about half a pound and a normal person needs 2 fruits a day to survive, our trees can only support about 150 people. With our current population at 154, we are already living on the edge of a severe food shortage. I wonder how my father managed to support over 230 people in the past, realizing that he must have crossed the border to harvest fruit from the Great Seal Camp's territory. My father's team would never have dared to venture deep into the inner part of Redwood Ridge, so poaching from our neighbors was their only option. Since the Great Seal Camp has over 300 people, they must possess many more ice shuo trees than we do. One Seong eagerly suggests we harvest from their side, pointing out that their hunters showed no mercy when they crossed over to steal our fruits in the past. If they can steal from us to survive, we can certainly borrow from them to thrive. The other hunters quickly agree, and I decide to lead the team toward the Great Seok territory to inspect their ice shuo trees. I am also curious because we have not seen a single member of their camp in the Redwood Ridge area for over a month. It seems doubtful that my previous bluff was enough to keep them away for so long, suspecting instead that something has happened to them. My thoughts are interrupted by a sharp cry of pain from Chubang, who is clutching his foot in the deep snow. Since first-tier cultivators have reinforced bodies, it is highly unusual for him to sustain a deep cut through his straw sandals. I use my stone axe to scrape away the snow near his feet, quickly hitting a hard metallic object. Brushing away the remaining drifts, I reveal a heavy 1.5-meter broadsword lying on the frozen ground. Wan Xiong immediately recognizes the weapon as the broadsword belonging to Wang Myung, one of the great Siok hunters. I clear the snow beneath the sword and uncover a frozen corpse, identifying Wang Myung by his features. After examining the body, I determined that he was killed by a single crushing punch to the head, with no signs of frostbeast claw marks. I order the team to search the surrounding area for other bodies, and Imge quickly locates 3 more corpses to our west. Each of these bodies bears an identical fatal red dot on the forehead, indicating they were executed with terrifying precision. The hunters begin to panic, wondering what kind of hostile camp could have wiped out these men without a struggle. I look at the broadsword in my hand and ask them who said these men had to be killed by humans or beasts. The realization that a strange monster is responsible for the slaughter sends a wave of dread through the hunters, and I immediately order everyone to return to the camp. I suspend all hunting and wood collection for the time being, refusing to risk our lives when the ghoul is active in our territory. We turn and head back in a hurried, silent march, keeping our eyes scanned for any movement in the dark forest. However, just as we turn to leave, a corpse lying in the snow about 100 meters to our west suddenly sits up. It slowly turns its head, watching our retreating figures with vacant, dead eyes. The cold wind howls as the controlled body stares at us, a silent hunter waiting in the dark. This forest is empty no more, and the hunter is now the hunted. I understand all too well how precious iron tools are in this frozen wilderness. Iron ore is an incredibly rare and advanced resource, far harder to obtain than wood. In this harsh environment, even cutting down a tree is a monumental struggle, let alone mining metal from the frozen earth. Only medium-sized camps possess iron tools, because mining requires a digging realm expert to extract the ore. Smelting is another massive obstacle, as a wood fire alone cannot generate the intense heat needed to melt iron without coal. For many years, our Great Ha camp relied on a single semi-iron stone axe owned by my father, Ha Jiang, which was lost when the wood puppet ghoul killed him. My father only managed to obtain that precious axe by trading a massive quantity of wood with an acquaintance from Rogue Camp's hunting team, showing how strictly the larger camps control the flow of metal. I am still unclear how the Great Seo camp managed to obtain their broadsword, but it was undoubtedly extremely precious to them. During our first encounter in the forest, their hunter threw this blade to Xiao Cheng before dying, highlighting its immense value. Yet, they allowed such a treasure to remain lost in the snow. Initially, I suspected that Wang Myung and the other three had privately crossed into our territory, encountered a beast, and died. If that were the case, however, the other members of Great Seo Camp would have come looking for them to retrieve the weapon. This thick layer of fresh snow over Wang Myung's body indicates that no one has returned to look for them, leaving the blade forgotten in the wilderness. The Great Seok lumbering team consisted of 13 people, including 2 archers, and Wang Myung with this broadsword. Even with such a powerful configuration, they fled in extreme disarray, abandoning their most valuable weapon in their haste to escape. Considering the precise red dots on the foreheads of the other 3 corpses, they must have encountered a strange monster. The survivors were either killed later in their flight, or were too terrified to return to the scene of the slaughter. Since these men died within our camp's boundaries, the strange monster is likely still roaming our territory. For this reason, I ordered our team back to the cave and suspended all wood collection and hunting. If we encounter that entity unprepared, the strength we have built could be wiped out in minutes, leaving our families at the mercy of the cold. While our hasty return is primarily for safety, it is also to inspect the broadsword I found in the snow. Sitting by the bonfire in our cavern, I hold the heavy weapon in my hands, a wave of pleasant surprise washing over me. The moment I touched the blade back at Redwood Ridge, my system interface flashed to show our resources. Our panel indicates that we now have 670 wood, 60 iron, and 0 coal, silver, or gold resources. Metals in this world are completely different from those on Blue Star, possessing a density that makes this relatively small blade weigh a staggering 600 jin. Our system converts 10 jin of this dense iron into 1 unit of resource, meaning the sword represents 60 units. This sudden windfall is incredibly exciting, especially since the lack of metal has stalled my camp upgrades for over 2 months. Although my wood resources have been growing steadily as more members reach the logging realm, my inability to find iron has kept the system stagnant. The neighboring camps would never trade their precious metal with us, and I did not even know the location of Rogue Camp to attempt to trade. I had been feeling increasingly frustrated by this limitation, knowing that I could not unlock any new buildings without iron. Now this broadsword has resolved my dilemma in the most unexpected way, and I quickly opened the system interface to review my options. The upgrade panel shows that upgrading the level 1 little bonfire requires 200 wood and 50 iron. It also reveals that constructing a wooden dummy post requires 100 wood and 20 iron. I spend a moment considering the wooden dummy post, which seems to be a piece of training equipment to assist our cultivators. However, our primary obstacle in training is a shortage of cold beast meat, not a lack of instruction, and my own martial arts expertise is more than enough to guide the camp. The training post can wait, but the bonfire is a vital defense that directly repels and damages elementary strange monsters. Upgrading the fire will also allow us to generate more small torches for our hunting trips. Since we have 670 units of wood, which is far more than the 200 required, upgrading the bonfire is the most logical choice. I focus on the interface and select the option to upgrade the little bonfire. A sudden rumble echoes through the cavern, and the bonfire in the center of the cavern erupts, appearing to be doused with oil. The flames shoot up another meter, casting a bright glow and raising the temperature throughout the cavern. Our camp members cry out in surprise, commenting on how warm the air has suddenly become, even without anyone adding wood. I ignore their chatter and carefully examine the updated attributes of the smelting furnace, which is the level 2 upgrade of our bonfire. The description states that the furnace can significantly raise the temperature within a 100-meter radius by burning coal. It greatly enhances the deterrent and damaging effects on elementary strange monsters, though it also attracts frost beasts more strongly. The system explains that we can now consume coal resources to smelt iron tools directly in the furnace. It also introduces 2 special functions. Burning 10 wood generates a portable small torch, and burning 100 wood produces a portion of condensing fire oil. This specialized oil is harmless to humans, but ignites instantly upon contact with strange monsters, dealing lethal damage. The requirements for the next upgrade are massive, calling for 2,000 wood and 5,000 iron. Despite the cost of future upgrades, I am thrilled to have a weapon that can help us fight the entity lurking in our woods. The memory of the system flames reducing the fake Hajong to ashes makes me eager to test this new oil. In this frozen world, a single mistake does not just kill you, it erases everything you have built. The simple dirt fire pit in our cavern has transformed into a circular stone furnace, measuring over 1 meter in diameter and 2 meters high. Our camp members gather around the structure in amazement, discussing how a simple bonfire could change into a solid furnace. As they feel the warm air radiating from it, they look at me with a reverence that borders on fanaticism. The rumors of my ability to summon fire out of thin air had already spread after the cave disaster, but witnessing this transformation firsthand makes it undeniable. I choose not to explain the phenomenon, knowing that in our desperate circumstances, a leader who controls such mysterious forces is a powerful unifying force. The hunters, including Ha-Chian, One Song, and the 7 members of our lumbering team, are already completely devoted to me after witnessing my battles with the frost beasts. They believe I control some profound ancient power that can protect them from the dangers of the ice abyss. Our members see that I am generous enough to increase their food allowances and selfless enough to share the cold beast meat to help them grow stronger. Because of this, a silent consensus has formed that only by following me can they survive this harsh winter. Over the next few days, I keep the team inside our cavern instead of returning to Redwood Ridge. Although the smelting furnace consumes 4 units of wood daily, which is twice our previous rate, our stockpile is more than sufficient. With 470 units of wood, we can easily survive for 3 months without gathering more. We also have over 10,000 jin of crystal fruit stored, meaning we are under no immediate pressure to risk our lives in the snow. This safety cushion allows our cultivators to focus entirely on their training without the constant fear of starvation or freezing. I considered traveling to Ta Mountain to find the Great Siak camp and check on their situation, but I decided against it. Their camp is heavily concealed, and a sudden search could easily lead to an unnecessary conflict if they are still functional. More importantly, I am still apprehensive about the strange monster that slaughtered their hunters. I did not get a clear look at the creature during our previous encounter since it manipulated my father's body from the shadows. Rushing into a confrontation without knowing our enemy's appearance or capabilities would put us at a severe disadvantage. Instead, I focus on leading the camp in cultivation and teaching them the fundamentals of combat, hoping to prepare them for the inevitable day we cross paths with the beast. Standing shirtless by the warm furnace, I demonstrate the punching movements of our martial arts to the gathered camp members. I explain to them that practicing a long fist routine with me will not only make absorbing the cold beast meat more efficient, but also enhance their combat capabilities. All martial arts ultimately train 2 things, namely reaction time and explosive power. Reaction time is the ability to anticipate danger, allowing them to dodge a frost beast's claws before they even swing.